Got a big idea but not sure where to start? Shopify makes it easy. From stunning templates to AI tools that write your product descriptions and boost your marketing, Shopify helps you build, sell, and grow fast. It's trusted by millions, from startups to brands like Gymshark and Mattel. And with 24/7 support, you're never on your own. Turn your dream into with Shopify. Start your $1 a month trial today at shopify.com/dax. That's shopify.com/dax.
You seem to still be up there somewhere.
Maybe I am. There are flying saucers.
Supposing they're Martians or something in there.
Hey guys, welcome back to another Weird Wednesday. I'm Asherz, and this is
Tobias.
And this week we are talking about Mothman again. But before we get there, Tobias, how was your weekend?
My weekend was pretty good, you know. What did I do? So I got to spend some time outside in a very cool and kind of creepy location, actually. It was a friend of a friend's property. And we were out there doing this totally unrelated to anything paranormal photo shoot. And it looks like it would be the perfect set for a horror movie, you know, and I probably say that about a lot of places, but this place in particular, I was like, you know what? I'd watch a fucking movie shot here with some masked maniac or a family of cannibals or zombies or demons or something. Absolutely. So that was super fun. And then Sunday, I went to the range with Adam. That's Adam Benedict over at the Pine Barrens Institute. And we shot some guns, which is fun. That's something we do pretty frequently, actually. You know, it's important to keep your skills up and not get rusty. So that was a good time. And then I interviewed Ken Gerhard for the book that I'm writing with Richard Estep. So that was super cool. You know, I hadn't got to talk to Ken in a while, and he's a good dude. And so we managed to catch up and just got fucking super weird for like an hour and talked about Mothman and cryptids and high strangeness and all kinds of other stuff. And so that was really, really cool. Yeah. I mean, overall, pretty solid weekend. You know, that's a solid like 12 out of 10 in terms of how I could have spent my weekend this week. So how was your weekend?
12 out of 10 is pretty good. I don't know if I could top that.
It's not a competition.
You know, my weekend, it's not like anything jarring or terrible or horrible happened or anything like that. But let me tell you, everybody that says that the planets don't matter, I'm challenging you because I hear that Freddie Mercury is drinking Gatorade right now. And man, my weekend definitely proved it. And it wasn't anything crazy. It was just little stuff. We went mini golfing and my daughter lost her ball, which ruined the whole game. We tried to go swimming, but then we ended up having to leave about 20 minutes into the swimming. It was just silly things that kept happening. So I decided to then just spend the rest of the weekend doing absolutely fuck all.
Okay.
Because sometimes you just have to submit, right? The universe wanted me to stay the fuck home, so I did.
Staying home is awesome. You know, I'm a big fan of it. I think that sounds great.
Yeah, like I said, it wasn't like anything horrible happened. It was just like it was like tiny shit. And it was like, okay, something's telling me to just go home. So I did. I did a podcast, somebody else's podcast, not my own, the Fight Bros podcast, which was nice and fun and interesting. It's new people that actually they came and listened to me lecture at the Whitville UFO Festival and wanted me to come on and talk about Indrid Cold. And I always love a reason to talk about Indrid Cold. Like, you don't have to fucking ask me twice, you know.
Sure.
I'll be there for it. So I did that, and man, that's really it. I really didn't do much else as a parent. We're getting ready for back to school, so that's exciting and great. And
are you excited? Because that wasn't convincing. Now, most parents don't. Isn't that a big deal? Aren't you supposed to get excited?
Yeah, because then your kid's not home all the time, and like I kind of get it, but like I don't know, you guys. I like my kid, you know.
Right. All these other people out there just fucking hating on their own kids. Just can't wait to get him the fuck out of the house.
I mean, she goes to school before I go to work, and she comes home after I get off work. So I have to now wake up earlier, and I hate that. I won't see her as much, So, like I said, I like my kid. I don't know what the fuck you guys are bitching about. Maybe don't have 20 of them, and you could enjoy them better. I don't know. I'm just kidding. Have as many as you want. I don't care.
I was going to say, there's somebody out there right now listening who has 10 kids, and they're just like, you don't know me.
Right. And I'm like, well, I know that you don't use protection or birth control, so I think I know you pretty well, it sounds like.
Right. You totally just won that imaginary argument we made up. You showed them.
Totally did. Yeah, I sure did. But if they really want to complain, again, the best way to complain to either of us on the show is to leave a 5-star review. It's the only things that we read from you guys. It's only 5-star reviews.
That's true. That's all I'll see.
Otherwise, if it's a 1-star, we won't even read it. So don't bother.
Might as well be invisible. Just go scream it into a pillow instead if it's only 1 star.
Let people know. I'm literally in bed with the government, and I will have them delete your 1-star review anyway. So I wish that were true. I wish that was real. So anyway, it wasn't too shabby. I liked it. I had a decent weekend, so I can't complain. So we have a very busy schedule ahead of us today. Oh, that's right. I guess I'll also, of course, if you listen to the show, you already know, but the sister show, Fringes of Reality, is back to finish out its season. Sorry, guys, I took such a big, long break there, but I really expected to record more episodes, and then it just didn't fucking happen. So I'm just going to give you what I got, and then we're going to move on to the third sister show of the On Wednesdays We Talk Weird podcast, Searching for Strange, which will be all based on internet mysteries. So definitely check those out while you're here. I know it can get kind of confusing because I know you see the Wednesday show and then these other weird shows pop up. But you know what? It's the best way for me to make money is to just upload them up here and force you to listen to them. So that's what I'm doing. That's the plan.
You just show up so by forcing them, I assume you show up on their doorstep. You've got some headphones with you, and you're going to sit them down and make them listen to it.
No, I bring an old style boombox that's Bluetooth compatible. And then I stand outside their window professing my love for them, but only if they listen. So that's the way it works. That's
really romantic, actually.
It works every time. Yeah, it wins everybody over. So, anyway, usually I dress up as I don't know. You see those big blow up dinosaur costumes. It's usually something ridiculous like that. Sometimes it's a dinosaur. Sometimes it's a corn dog. It just depends,
Sure.
Anyway, so I did that. I did edit those shows over the weekend. So I did a little bit of work pertaining to that kind of stuff, and then actually went back onto the track of Bigfoot a little bit. So the BFRO had posted a Bigfoot sighting that had happened pretty locally to me. But it happened back in December, which I find very odd. Tobias, how many wintry Bigfoot sightings have you come across? I mean, there's really not a lot, right?
Well, let me think about it, actually, because I think one thing that you will see reported with relative frequency in wintertime, at least here, will be suspected tracks. People will find prints in snow. Because you got to understand, winter doesn't stop people from doing a fucking thing in Wisconsin. It doesn't stop anything. People are just doing whatever they would normally do, only it's wintertime, So you have a lot of outdoor enthusiasts who love winter hiking, of course, hunting and ice fishing, all of this stuff that people still do outside. So, it's kind of in that grand Midwest tradition of never letting the weather stop us from doing anything. People still manage to get outside a decent amount. And so I'll see a good number, and by a good number, I mean a couple, it's fucking Bigfoot sightings. They don't happen with all that frequency under the best circumstances. But I'll see a couple usually per season, per winter season of people finding tracks. But The other kinds of Bigfoot sightings, like the sightings where you see a big hairy humanoid or something, those might be less frequent.
Yeah. I do find that there's definitely not as many winter sightings, but I always do find it interesting because you would think that the winter time would make a better breeding ground for physical evidence being tracks.
Right.
So I like to go out in the winter time. I mean, I don't love it or anything. You know what I mean?
It's
Hiking in the
cold.
winter, it's
Yeah.
cold and it can be extra dangerous, right? So I'll go on like real super easy paths, which is probably why I don't find anything. I'm not trying to really fucking trek through the woods in the winter like that, but I do. You know.
Right.
But anyway, it's kind of like kicked off everybody in the area being like, "Oh my god, there's Bigfoot here." Which is always pretty shocking. And that's something we'll kind of talk about is just the fact that people don't really understand what's happening around them in the world of strange. But yeah, so everybody locally has been like, "Oh my god, there's Bigfoot," and then people, of course, have been coming out of the woodwork with their Bigfoot stories. Because even though I live in a suburb that is in a major city, you know, um, right immediately around us is a bunch of nothing. So it's like prime area for something like Bigfoot. So the sighting that the BFRO reported, BFRO reported was, in that nowhere area, right outside the city. But it is an area that's kind of known for this type of thing. As a matter of fact, it got kind of really popular. It's actually more popular for its dogman than Bigfoot. So I don't know. That was kind of cool. And like I said, it kind of reignited my locally what's going on, right? Because if it's local, it's easy to get to. So that's nice to get local reports.
Right.
And then, of course, got me into Bigfoot for at least 24 hours again. So
Nice.
so we'll see. We'll see where that trail goes. Probably nowhere. Probably nowhere. Will I go out there and investigate? Yeah, it's been a while since I've been to that area. Why not? Sure. Why not? Let's do it.
You might as well do it now while it's nice out.
Right. I mean, it's like 20 minutes from my house. Let's go. Let's do the thing. I'll let you guys know if I find anything. Probably not, but if I do, you guys will be the first to know. So there's that. Anyway, you want to talk
Nice.
about some news?
Sure.
I have one news.
Okay.
One news
Good.
exactly. And it is more of a talking point rather than news, sort of. So Netflix, you've heard of them.
What? Who?
Yeah, right. Netflix, or at least there's an article going around announcing that Netflix has this upcoming documentary coming out. It's called Vampires in Gym City. And yes, Vampires in Gym City. And they are claiming that Dayton, Ohio, which is where I live, Dayton, Ohio has the largest vampire population next to New Orleans.
Oh, I love that for you.
I do too, to be honest with you. It's very exciting. But of course, it has been filled with nothing but people that I know saying, yeah, no, if there were vampires here, like, we'd know about it. Like, we're the weird goth kids. We would know about it. They're right. But it's showcasing a murder that had happened back in the 90s. And it's kind of surrounding a particular club, and it's called Asylum, right? It's a goth club. Imagine that.
I used to frequent the one goth club in Madison, Wisconsin, quite a bit. So I am familiar with the general concept.
But the general concept of a goth club, everybody there is some form of vampire, I'm sure. But the bartender there was telling one of the investigators working on the case that the guy that they were looking for, this guy goes missing. And the last place that people know where he was supposed to be dropped off at Asylum, the club, and then he was never seen from again, and it's still missing to this day. But the bartender there told the investigator that he was killed and beheaded as part of a ritual from the group of vampires there.
Oh, okay. Well,
so
fucking A.
I'm gonna check this out. I'm like really invested now. I mean, I like true crime, right? I love a good satanic panic story.
Yeah.
Was there a group of people thinking that they were killing people in the name of something higher? Because that does happen. I mean, like, Satanists aren't bad people, but like, there are groups of people that get together and kill for whatever reason. And religion can definitely be one of them.
Sure.
Is that part of it? Is there a group of people that identify as vampires in the Dayton, Ohio area? Probably.
I
They
hope so.
exist. So
I'm gonna watch the shit out of that. That's like all of my interests intersecting. If
right.
they could figure out a way to fit like some high strangeness in there, I would just watch that.
Well, aren't vampires the high
And nothing
strangeness part?
else.
Maybe
And what?
aren't vampires kind of the high strangeness part? I mean, I guess it depends on what kind
No,
of vampires they
because
are.
it's not going to be real vampires. It's just going
You're
to be
right.
like pasty goth kids who think they're vampires and they like drink each other's blood as part of their weird sex shit. And like, that's cool, live your best life. Like, I don't give a fuck, but you're not a goddamn vampire. If you can't turn into a bat or like live forever, then whatever. Like if I can take you in a fist fight, you're not a fucking vampire. All right.
Well, who's to say you can't take a vampire in a fist fight?
That's true. It could be a weak ass vampire, and I'm a pretty big dude, so okay, that's
I
a
mean,
fair point.
you know all the
But
rules. You know what their weaknesses are.
right, yeah, I would stake the shit out of a vampire. Yeah, okay, fair. But still, my point stands. Like, well, yes, you know what I'm talking about. Like
I do know what you're talking about.
the vampire subculture of people who are just super into vampires, and like
Yeah.
that's rad, And so they end up LARPing. Like they do this kind of live action role playing thing, which becomes, I think, something of an obsession. Maybe they take it a little far, and next thing you know, they think they really are vampires, and that's kind of where I draw the line, because they're always like, like they're just a vampire, but in like the worst possible way. Like they don't have any cool vampiric superpowers or anything, but they're like, oh, I don't like the sun and I have to drink blood. And I'm like, well, that's all the shit that sucks about being a vampire.
Yeah.
Like, can you like lift a car? Can you turn into mist? Can you hypnotize people? You can't do any of that. Well, fuck, man. Get a different hobby, because that sounds like it sucks.
Right. And also now everybody makes fun of you.
Right. Yeah. And yeah. Also, now everybody thinks you're a fucking total weirdo and they're going to make fun of you. Being a weirdo is awesome. Like, whatever. I've been weird my whole life. It's not like nobody makes fun of me. Like, sure. Like that shit happens. I just find the whole thing a little desperate, I guess. It's just one of those things where I'm like, could this be solved with higher self-esteem? Like where you felt you didn't need to be something else or somebody else because you just liked who you were enough. I don't know. Just there's something about it like that just kind of makes me a little sad. That's all. I wish people didn't feel like they needed to pretend like they were a vampire or something.
Now, I'll say, as an adult, I really enjoy playing. Like I do. I like to play. And
Sure.
that looks like me doing cosplays and going to events, or going to different themed events, and getting lost in that world for a little bit. It's when you live that life all the time
Right.
is where you're just taking it too far at that point. I agree. I was going to ask you what you thought about those people, but I think you
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, and you make a good point. Like, look, imagination is important. Play is important. That's not something any of us should ever grow out of. I mean, my favorite hobby in the whole world is playing tabletop role playing games.
yeah.
I fucking love them. I've loved them since I was in 7th grade. I've been playing them for 30 years, and I think that's great. And I'm never going to grow out of them. I'll be running fucking Dungeons and Dragons in the retirement home. Like I'll be that guy. So yeah, that shit is all super important. And if it's just cosplay or whatever, then yeah, awesome, cool. Like that's great. I think that's fantastic, and people should do it. But when it becomes more than that, when people really start to believe that they are something that they are not, then I think it can become pretty problematic pretty quickly. And if that was the case in Dayton, Ohio, and it turned into something murderous, then that's really too fucking bad.
Yeah.
But I will watch the shit out of that documentary regardless.
Yeah, I'm excited to watch. I don't know if it's out. I don't think it's out yet, or it's coming. Probably
Okay.
a Halloween thing, but it's definitely stricken up some conversation locally. And I'm just saying, if you're a local vampire, or you are local and you've heard of these vampires in Dayton, Ohio, let me know, because I heard this claim a couple years ago and have yet to find any. So I I don't even care if like you've murdered someone. Like I just want to talk to you, like and see what your
Yeah.
deal is. Like
Even
let's
if you're just like a lifestyler, like that would be interesting enough, you know. But
yeah
if you really think you have psychic vampire powers, because that's the thing too, we didn't mention that now. There's been a sort of shift, I think, because it's more convenient this way. Instead of being like, "Oh, I'm the kind of vampire that has superpowers and can turn into a bat or mist or jump over a fucking house or whatever, and I have to drink blood." Now it's, "Oh, I'm a psychic vampire,
yeah
so I feed on psychic energy and I have psychic powers." Which, okay, great. I see what you did there because nobody can disprove that because all that shit's invisible. So anybody can just say that and then be like, "Oh, okay, well, good luck to you then. You know, best wishes with your psychic vampirism."
Do you do you remember that movie Mystery Men?
I do. Yeah, I
And the
love that
one
movie.
kid who could turn invisible, but only if you didn't look at him.
Yes.
And it turns out he really was invisible.
Yeah, totally worked.
Anyway, that's what it made me think of.
Right. No, it's true though. It's just one of those things where I'm like, I'm not going to, and I couldn't if I wanted to take this away from you. So you go be the best psychic vampire you can be. You get it. You go and get it. Good for you.
You're nicer than I am.
It's just because what's the other option? Arguing with strangers on the internet all day?
Yeah.
I don't have time for that shit.
Yeah. Well, no, that's a good point. I mean, definitely not. I mean more in person. I'm not going to sit there and feed into your fantasy. Don't make me a part of your kink. I didn't consent to this.
Right.
We're not playing here. That's not,
Fair.
unless I did consent to it, and then by all means. But
Oh yeah,
uh,
totally.
So anyway, that's the only thing I had is just this upcoming production that I'm
Fair
excited
enough.
to see. So
Well, I'm also excited to see it now. So we will all keep our eyes peeled for that.
Yeah.
I've got a news actually. I've been pretty busy lately, but I have this reports from the void that I wanted to share that I thought was pretty interesting, and this came from an email that somebody had sent us with the subject line "mysterious bipedal animal / beast." So we received that. This came into the Singular Fortean Society inbox last January 20th. So, boy, it's kind of a longer email. So I'm actually just going to sum it up rather than reading the whole thing. But the point is, this person out in Kent, England. So Kent, of course, is a county in England, which is, I think, basically like kind of like states are here. Was bicycling to a new job at 10 p.m. And this was near, and I am hoping I'm pronouncing this correctly. You can never tell with like the UK because they'll pronounce shit like all kinds of weird ways, and I'm sure they think we pronounce things
like
weird too.
aluminium. Yeah, fucking
Right.
weird.
Well, they added a letter to that word. Anyway, so yeah, this was supposed to be near the Port Limpna Zoo. I think we'll just refer to it as the nearby zoo going forward, but that's the one, and it's in Kent. And so this person was riding their bike. They said to Dover Station, and then to Weston Hangar Station, and then onward to their destination. So they have this piece of paper with directions written on it because apparently they didn't have any internet and no credit to like purchase internet, I guess, for their cell phone. And so they had paper directions. And so they were using the flashlight on their cell phone to read the directions while riding their bicycle, which is not the safest way to go about that. I don't recommend this, which will make sense for what happens later. So they're riding their bicycle, paper directions in one hand, cell phone in the other to read the paper directions. 10 p.m. at night, middle of fucking nowhere, basically, like out in the country. And it starts to get foggy. And unbeknownst to them, they have gone the wrong way. And so they find themselves on this dark country road. And so there's this thick fog or mist that is sort of like sporadically spread across the area here. So like they would go into a section of thick fog, right out of it and it's clear, and then right into another section of thick fog. And they've got a wooded area to their right, and then a line of trees to the left, behind which were farm fields, right? And so as they're writing, they hear this heavy footed sound of something approaching. Like they said, it sounded big, and specifically, I'm using this word heavy footed because that's what they said. That's how they described it. And they said it sounded bipedal and big and heavy footed, rushing at them from the wooded side, so not the farmer field side, like the side that's all woods. So rushing at them, and they said that they had this sort of visceral response, that like their hair kind of stood up, they've got goosebumps, and they're just instantly terrified, and they just try to take off, right? And so they take off, they make it like 30 or 50 feet, and there's no moonlight, no stars, so it's dark as shit out here. Can't see anything outside of whatever light their fucking phone flashlight is providing. And they take off, make it 50 feet, decide to turn around and look to see if this thing is chasing them, whatever it was. And they don't see anything, but they do hit the embankment and like just fly over their handlebars and end up crashing on the side of the road. I'm only laughing because they were fine. And it's hilarious when somebody falls off a bike and they're okay, But,
I like that caveat there. It's like,
Right.
well, I mean, when does the laughter stop at that point? Is it the scraped knee, right? That's so funny. They're okay.
Yeah, that's true.
But like,
as long as you're okay.
and you can't laugh.
No, yeah, if they had like a traumatic brain injury or something, then it wouldn't be funny. Any injury that a Midwestern parent is likely to tell you to rub some dirt on it or walk it off is funny. Like
hilarious.
that's what you need. That's the bar. If that's something you could picture, it's still funny.
Laughter is good medicine.
Yes, agreed. And yeah, I mean, and so that's basically it. They crash their bike, get up, like their bike's kind of fucked, like it won't change gears anymore, but they could, yeah, right. But they could ride it enough to get to the next village, at which point they find a fire station, and these super helpful, like firefighters just give them a ride, I guess, to where they need to go. I mean, I love that for them in England, if that's a thing, because I don't think that would happen here, but I guess everybody's nicer there. I don't know. But anyway, so they end up getting where they're going. And the point of the story to them was just how frightened they were. Like they just said they had never been that scared in their entire life. And so I thought that was interesting, it certainly had a big effect on them. And they didn't really come out and say what they thought it was. Of course, if you are in the communities that we are in, then your mind probably goes to like Bigfoot or, Dogman or some kind of monster or cryptid or something. And I think that's perfectly natural. There aren't as many, but there are Bigfoot sightings that happen in the UK. They're most often reported in places like Wales or Scotland, but they are reported, and there's a lot of folklore, because these countries, again, are so much older than us that they have the benefit of all of this folklore that our country doesn't have. Like the various indigenous peoples here do, but our country itself like doesn't. And so anyway, like there is all of this folklore and stuff that kind of mirrors the more modern Bigfoot and other cryptid sightings, which is interesting. So I don't know. They didn't see Bigfoot, right? They didn't see Dogman. They didn't see, I don't know, fucking Flatwoods Monster or or goblins or anything like that. But it did scare the shit out of them. So who knows?
Wow. So, UK Bigfoot is something we're going to be talking about, I believe, in an upcoming episode. in the next couple months, I think. I think it's on the
Nice.
schedule, because people definitely want to talk about it. I have some opinions about it. UK Bigfoot seems to be more supernatural, and that's just based off of the fact that, like, the UK doesn't actually have a natural habitat anymore, because of all the crazy colonizations that happened during that time period. I mean, they like wiped out all of their natural forestry. It's all anything that they have now, they've had to replace basically.
Yeah.
So something like a relic hominid, right, just wouldn't exist there. It just unless somebody brought it over from somewhere else, right, or
Mm.
had pets of it, or it existed in that kind of form. So I'm super excited to talk about that topic, and really get into, well, like you said, kind of more the folklore aspect of it, because they do have um, that rich history of folklore that we all of our folklore comes from them, right? It's a mix of them and
Yeah.
of course the Native Americans, but
Right.
modern day folklore is all from across the pond. So
Sure.
super interesting, very interesting. What do you think about it?
I don't know what to think. When it comes to Bigfoot specifically in the UK, I mean, I understand your point, and I have the same issue with a lot of Bigfoot sightings here. And obviously, the United States is enormous compared to something like the UK. And to put that in perspective, the UK, so that's Northern Ireland, England, Wales, and Scotland. So all of that together is like the size of Oregon.
Right.
So that's the size of
It
a
really is.
single state in our
Yeah.
country, right? Just the one. Um, so it's not big, but at the same time, you've got things like, say, anomalous big cats, right? That also aren't supposed to be there, but there is mounting evidence, scientific evidence in the form of like DNA samples and things
Yeah.
that point towards an objective reality. And that doesn't prove Bigfoot, of course, but it does make me wonder, what if, like maybe Bigfoot, like if these anomalous big cats could hide there for so long and just now through some lucky breaks, are starting to be discovered and having real evidence like accumulate in favor of their existence, then who knows what else is possible. Obviously, we don't have the same kind of evidence for Bigfoot or any other kind of cryptid in that area, but who knows?
Probably they're just ghosts of Bigfoot, you know?
But, yeah, that's almost certainly it. They could be. I like to think that I don't know. I was trying to think of something clever. Who knows what the fuck they are? Alien genetic experiments. That's a popular one. Interdimensional shamans. That's probably my favorite.
Yeah,
That communicate
definitely that.
exclusively through like telepathy. Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah, it's obviously that. We'll get into it when we do that episode, because
Right.
it'll be more of that rather than the flesh and blood variety that we just kind of talked about recently. So,
Right.
with North America, so it'll be fun to have that contrast. So anyway, I'm sure you know what, and I'm not saying that this person's experience didn't happen. I'm sure it sounds like they very much experienced something.
Sure.
So, um, better
Absolutely.
him than me. So
Agreed.
that's
I don't want to fall off my bike. That shit sucks.
yeah, yeah. Don't want to scrape knees over here. It's terrible. And then to break it on top of that, how tragic.
Yeah. I mean, I hopefully it was easy to fix. I don't know, but like maybe just the chain got screwed up or something. But yeah, just all around an unpleasant experience. And on the way to like your first day of work, which also, like, if you're going to your first day of work and it's 10 p.m., I mean, that job already sounds like a chore. Like to have this on top of it, like, man, fuck all that.
Yeah. Well, did he get to work? Did he say?
I didn't really say. I mean, I assume so because these helpful firefighters gave them a ride.
Well, all
Yeah.
right then. Was that all your news? Your one news?
That was my news. I have been well, I generally, at least lately, I've been doing one article a week because I feel like That's a good number of articles. Mostly because one, I'm busy, but like beyond that, I think we both know that there isn't that much credible phenomena that happen like consistently and reliably in this field. And so
Yeah.
if you try to commit to not even like a 24-hour news cycle, right? Which I've seen some people try to do in this field, and that just leads to nonsense very quickly. But just to, even publishing an article every single day, you're going to find out very quickly that there isn't enough good information for you to do that. And you're going to be scraping the bottom of the barrel very quickly. And that's why you'll see so many, quote unquote articles that are basically just like reposts of fucking hoaxes from Reddit and shit like that. And the one thing I don't ever want the Singular 40 in society to be is that kind of clickbait bullshit. I want, if somebody sees that we posted an article, I want them to assume that it has some actual fucking value and isn't just some bullshit that because we feel like we need to churn out a certain amount of content. So
Yeah. Well, and as someone that does the news every week,
right.
Sometimes it's just stuff that I find interesting, just like this week, it's just about this neat documentary coming out,
Oh yeah.
Not necessarily high strangeness related. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. Sometimes there's no news. Sometimes I couldn't even be bothered, so it just depends. Or maybe there just wasn't news at all that week. It happens. But
right.
if I wanted to, I could talk about every single new UFO sighting that was reported this week, across all the different platforms. I'm not going to do that. Not interested.
No. Super pointless.
Right.
Yeah, no, I don't think that anything that you share as news isn't worth sharing on this show. I think it's all great, because a lot of it, a lot of the time it's just something kind of funny. And this is a show for people to laugh and have fun a lot of the time. So I think that worked great, like for this format, it's just different than, like, that's not what the Singular 40 in society is. You know what I mean? We're very much up our own ass and being respectable. Right. So we have to not, I don't know, share articles on fucking pizza delivery pranks or something.
Well, okay then. I see what you're saying here.
Right. No, actually what I'm getting at is if you look at some websites and similar, there are sort of like some paranormal news aggregate sites, and it's stuff that gets shared because they don't do the fun stuff like you do, it's really just more trying to have these sites that just try to have all this substantive, like all these substantive paranormal articles. And then like at least two thirds of everything they post, because they try to do like daily updates and new articles, is just garbage. It's just pointless fucking garbage. It's just noise, So I think there's a big difference between like the curated fun articles that you find and the people who are just endlessly trying to churn out content to either beat a fucking algorithm or accumulate fucking ad revenue or whatever, like whatever shitty reason they are adding all of this pointless noise to the conversation is. Like, it's just, there's a huge gulf between like what you're doing here and what they do. It's not even close to the same.
Well, I'll tell you, weird is subjective, and I did that on purpose when I made the show, because sometimes I don't want to talk about a topic that I have to seriously investigate. Sometimes I just want to talk about weird shit.
Sure.
And that doesn't always mean paranormal. And so it's why true crime gets thrown in the mix sometimes, right? There was nothing paranormal about Travis the Chimp. It's just fucking a bizarre story. But I'll tell you, the news itself, I rip that right from a website that I used to visit on the regular, and I'll tell you guys about it. It's crazyshit.com. And I don't even know if it's still around anymore. I don't think it is, but it used to be a site that did, well, a lot of pictures of poop, which is
Okay.
gross, but a lot of pictures, like that's where I used to go to get my gore, right? Real life gore. But then they had this section and it was crazy news, right? And so
Okay.
it was just all these, like, sometimes it would be about, like, a serial killer was just caught. Here's the update on it. Or sometimes it would be about pizza delivery pranks, or I mean, it was just a fucking shit show of crazy news. And that's kind of the vibe I'm going for here. So hopefully I make the creators of crazyshit.com proud.
I'm sure you do. I'm sure you do. So I think everybody listening sort of understands that I am fully on board with the news that we provide here. And I think that it is fantastic at this point. It is not at all like, one of those weird aggregate sites that just tries to churn out content because they, again, are taking advantage of people and their credulity to try to make money on the fucking internet.
I did look it up. Crazyshit.com is still a thing, but
Nice.
it's slightly different now. It's mostly porn. So
Oh, well,
so there was some porn back then too, but it was like crazy porn. Anyway,
right. It'd be like Japanese scat porn or something,
right.
probably.
That's how I was raised.
Oh, no. I mean, my formative years were spent on rotten.com. I
Yep.
get it.
It's back in the day. Anyway, reports from the void, Tobias. I think it's been a while since you kind of explained what that is.
Oh, sure. So,
If you want
yes.
to kind of explain that, I meant to ask you sooner.
Right. Speaking of journalistic integrity, reports from the void is a separate column. So I'll read you the little intro that I do for these. So, Reports from the Void is a repository to share those stories for which we do not have enough information to make a full report. This is usually because of little or no communication from the witness following their initial submission. The Singular Fortean Society will always provide as much information as possible regarding any correspondence during our attempts to speak with those involved. This series is meant only to present you with the full breadth of the information sent to us and makes no judgments towards the veracity of any stories shared within it. Honestly, if more places, like more sites or more, quote unquote news sites, I mean, you got to put news in fucking quotes there, would have that kind of like qualifier presented noticeably in front of a lot of their stories, I'd probably respect them a lot more. You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
yeah, I do. I have to read those sites. I know what you mean.
Right. Like you know what I'm talking about. And I don't know. Like I'm not trying to, I probably sound like a total just pretentious ass, and I'm not trying to, but like it is a real issue in this field, the way that these stories get reported and the amount of serious investigation and journalism that goes into them. It's often none. It's often zero, and they just kind of get spread around like folklore. But that shouldn't be the goal if you're aiming to tell people the news. If that's what's happening, then you need to present at least whatever facts you have, and you have to present them honestly, and you have to present them in a way that is useful to your reader in order for them to understand the story that you are presenting. And that shit just gets ignored a lot of the time. Hell, most of the time, almost all of the time in this fucking field. And it's just so frustrating.
Yeah, I don't. One mistake that I feel like I make a lot is to not really share my reports with people. But I don't know. It's not like I'm trying to gatekeep or anything. I mean, those people can also reach out to other people and report their shit. But I don't want to put something out there and then have it become something it's not.
Yeah.
No, and so I just don't even put it out there. And also, not just that. It's more work, right? So maintaining, a whole publication and all that, it's just not something I'm interested. And you don't get paid to post it on social media, so fuck that.
No, you really don't. Yeah, anybody who thinks that like the Singular 40 Society website is making me a bunch of money, it doesn't. We are lucky to get the cost of the website paid for in ad revenue, because ads don't make shit anymore. Like they just don't. It just is what it is. So it really is like, it's a labor of love, like that's not something that writing for that is not something that I do for money. It's something that I do because I think it's important, and I hope people enjoy it and get some kind of use out of it.
It could be for money if you were also putting out clickbaity bullshit several times a week, but
Right.
that's the thing. You have to kind of decide what's important to you going into this field. We've talked enough about that, how it's just not, if you're doing it for the right reasons, it's money shouldn't really come into play as much, so it
Right.
should, but it shouldn't. I mean, you have to kind of sell your dignity in order to make the kind of money you're looking for. But also your time is worth something. So.
Yeah. I mean, it's a balancing act. It's not like I don't expect to be paid for my work. Of course I do. And I think anybody else should as well. But yeah, you're right. Like it's tough to make a living in this field without, on some level, just being okay with spreading bullshit.
Yeah. I'm just happy that the podcast pays for itself, I'll be
Yeah.
honest. I'm like, oh, great.
Yeah, you don't have to make shit up.
Right.
It's like a cheat code if you do. So like we're playing on hard mode and succeeding anyway, which is to our credit, and that's fucking awesome. But yeah, if you just want to make shit up, it's easier. It's a cheat code to make more money in this fucking field. So,
and if you do that, people like me and Tobias are going to judge you. So
yes, I'll probably go on a weird, super judgy rant like at the end of our news section. Maybe every single week. We'll see.
It's like its own segment now.
Right? Tobias judges the work of others, and especially the news, and inadvertently insults his co-host.
So rude. Yeah.
I know. I didn't mean it like that.
Well, lucky for you, I have to be embarrassed in order to be embarrassed, and I'm not embarrassed at all.
Good. You shouldn't be.
Anyway, I was going to say something very, very, very forward, but I won't. It was about buttholes. It's fine.
Oh, boy.
We'll just leave it alone. We won't talk about buttholes yet this episode, right? We got to save it for when the kids go to bed. Okay, so anyway.
Put the kids to bed. Out come the buttholes.
The kids might want to listen to this episode because I guess it's about this little thing that you did on Netflix, right? This little, what's it called? Unidentified subjects. Is that what it's about?
Solved something. I don't
Solved
remember.
meat
It's all a
pie?
blur.
Unsolved Mysteries. Tobias Wayland, you were on there.
I was.
So I told my mom, we went out to dinner, and I was like, well, my co-host was on Unsolved Mysteries. He was like the guy. And she's like, is he okay?
No, he's dead. But he was on an episode of Unsolved Mysteries, so that's still pretty cool.
They're trying to find out what happened. And, then it kind of hit me like, oh, I guess it does sound that way, huh?
Yeah.
Because as we know, Unsolved Mysteries, there's a lot of true crime, right?
Right.
But you weren't on there for that. At least I haven't seen that episode yet. So
No. If you can hear me right now, I am very much alive and
still
fine.
here. So how did this, I mean, as much as you can share, how did this start? Did they email you? I mean, did someone just show up at your door? The ghost of Robert Stack, he just came to you in a dream? What happened?
I wish I had some like prophetic dream starring Robert Stack. No, it was pretty mundane. It's the same way really I've been contacted to be on any other production that I've been on, because this wasn't the first time that I've been on TV either. I've done some documentaries for Small Town Monsters. I was on Expedition X for the Discovery Channel. And generally what happens is, yeah, I mean, it's very normal. A producer will reach out to you and say, hey, we want to do an episode on such and such, and do you mind talking to us about it? And then you talk to them, and assuming that number one, you're not full of shit, and you are reasonably capable of speaking like an adult human being, and conveying some kind of message, or just, well, again, just being able to speak normally in a way that anybody would ever want to listen to, then you go from there. And the nice thing I think about this particular subject, for me, and then for Unsolved Mysteries, is that I've been doing it for so long, that I do have a lot of witnesses with whom I have worked, to try to understand their experiences. And many of them were willing to come forward for this, and speak publicly, which I really respect. I really, really do, because it's easy for me, it's easy for me to get up in front of a camera and talk about something that happened to somebody else that I've investigated, because there's some separation. Like, there's a certain distance between me and that event. But what happened to these people is something that has impacted them directly, and often in a way that is very powerful. And so, for them to be willing to put themselves out there like that, I just respect it so much. And then, really, to add to that, they don't really benefit from it. Like, if anybody is going to benefit from being on television, it's probably somebody like me who works on some level professionally in this field. But these witnesses, and I think this adds to their credibility, they don't benefit financially or anything like that. It really just is something I feel like they just need to do for themselves. And that's why they do it, so.
I don't think I've ever seen the witnesses showcased anywhere else. Like, I don't think I've ever seen, they haven't been on TV. I don't think I've ever seen them doing podcasts or YouTube videos or anything. I mean, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but are you familiar with them doing other stuff?
There a couple of them had appeared in other stuff with me before. So let's see, Jonathan and Paula were on the trail of the Lake Michigan Mothman for Small Town
That's
Monsters.
right. Yeah.
And that was because I had worked with them before, and we had a relationship built on mutual trust and respect over the course of some time, having kept in contact after investigating their sightings. And so when Small Town Monsters wanted some witnesses, I had a much longer list of witnesses, but those ultimately were two that ended up in that production. And so for Unsolved Mysteries, again, I had a huge list that included Jonathan and Paula, because they're good witnesses, and so they were included in that as well. Now, they have, to my knowledge, never gone out and sought any kind of publicity. So they've never gone and tried to market themselves to be on a show that I haven't asked them to be on, which I think is probably a pretty important distinction to be made there.
So when it came to Unsolved Mysteries, did the production crew already know who they were going to get as far as the witnesses go, or did they ask you for inputs in reaching out to these witnesses?
They asked me, and Lon, so Lon Strickler was on there too, and he's also spoken to many, many witnesses. And so between the two of us, we were consulted, and I think we each put together separate lists of people that we thought would be good. And then what I do is I will not give out people's contact info without their permission. That's a hard line for me. And so I reached out to a bunch of different people that I thought might be interested, that I had worked with, and whose stories I thought were really, really interesting, and also people whom I thought, based on their earlier interviews with me, would be willing to do something like this. So what I wanted to avoid was like re-traumatizing anybody or making anybody feel uncomfortable, because certainly there are witnesses with whom I've spoken where I am sure they don't want to have to fucking tell this story again. I am even more sure that they don't want to tell it on camera. And so those people I didn't contact, because I just know better. You have to have a sense of how people have reacted to their experiences, and just kind of go by that, because fundamentally you just want to make sure you're treating people right. Like, you don't be a dick. Like, don't use people, don't exploit people, but give people that you think might appreciate it an opportunity to share their story. And so, yeah, I mean, I had reached out to a bunch of the witnesses with whom I had worked, and that's how they ended up on this episode. So, I mean, I think that's why investigators tend to be featured so prominently on shows like Unsolved Mysteries, is because their production team, at least the one that I worked with, was amazing. Just the best people, professional, hardworking. Just everything about how they conducted the production was fantastic. But they don't have 7 years experience of directly investigating Mothman sightings in the Midwest, and I do. So of course they're going to have to lean on me to find witnesses who are willing to speak in this episode. It just makes sense.
Well, and that's what you do, right? You don't go, well, I know a little bit about this, so let me go ahead and take the helm on it, right? You get someone that actually knows what the fuck they're talking about. So good on them, for doing that.
Right.
Instead of just having generic narrators, they actually had real investigators, which is nice. That's a nice touch.
Right. Something that I should say something that not enough people in this field do is admit that they're not the person to talk to about a given subject.
Yes.
Somebody will reach out to them and be like, "Oh, hey, do you know a lot about this?" And they'll be like, "Is this an opportunity for me to be on TV or somehow gain celebrity?" Then yes, I'm the expert you're looking for, just 100% of the time.
Yeah.
And it's too bad. It keeps the spotlight away from people who are probably a little more qualified to speak on certain subjects.
Yeah, I recently had an incident where I saw someone in a Facebook group sharing their dogman encounter, or at least wanting to share their dogman encounter. And people in the comments were like overwhelmingly directing this person to YouTubers. I mean, just YouTubers and podcasters. Like, these aren't people that seriously study the subjects. They're people that profit off of these people's stories. And after seeing it happen over and over and not seeing not one credible researcher in the comments, I spoke up and I was like, hey, listen, if you just want to tell your story and you just want it to be told, this is a great, these are great suggestions. But if you're wanting to kind of understand it, this is not the route you want to take. And I didn't step up and go, hey, I'm your dogman person. We should talk. Instead, I try to get information about their location and kind of what their goal was, so that I could direct them to somebody else to talk to that could genuinely help them, because that's the right thing to do.
It really is. It really, really is. A lot of times people will reach out to me because they have an ongoing set of phenomena, happening to them, and they'll want help. And I could go, okay, well, yeah, give me all the details, and hey, you mind if I put this in a book? Okay, cool, see you never.
Right.
But instead, I do just what you said, which is, okay, which part of the country are you in? If you need somebody on site, I will find somebody in your area, because at this point, I think we both know people all over the damn country.
Yeah.
And there's usually somebody I trust to investigate something in any given area. And so, if there's a person that has a legitimate need, then yeah, I have no problem at all, like contacting somebody in their area and be like, hey, can I put you in contact with this witness? They say they need help and they need somebody on site, So,
Yeah.
but not enough people do that, to your credit. I think that's fucking awesome, because it doesn't happen enough.
It doesn't. And that's the difference. Your wrestling comparison's great because it fucking works here, But yeah, you have to be adult enough and mature enough to just go, yeah, it's not for me. I'm in Ohio. If you got an active property in California, unless you're going to pay for me to come out there, and I'm probably not worth it, I'm not coming out there. I'm sorry. It's not because I don't want to. It's just because I also don't have the money to jump on a plane and come out there.
Right.
Sounds great, but let me get you somebody in California that could actually do what you're asking.
Yes.
That's the right thing. But anyway, the whole, getting off track here. The whole point is, I definitely want to commend Unsolved Mysteries for treating the witnesses with the care. At least they seem like they do, right? And you've mentioned that, they definitely made this more about the witnesses and their experiences. I thought that they did have a great balance with what they presented, as far as giving the witnesses a place to share their experience with people.
Right.
Which was fantastic to see. I need to stop being an investigator, and I need to start doing what we came here to do. So we open it up to everybody.
Right. Yes. Questions.
I'm the one trying to interview you, right? With my own selfish questions. How dare I? Because that's just what I do. So we open it up to you guys, the listeners, to ask your questions to Tobias about his about his experience with Unsolved Mysteries, about his investigation into this particular section of Mothman lore, or just Mothman in general. Why not, right? You've been working on this other book now pertaining to the Point Pleasant stuff.
Well, it includes everything.
Oh, my bad.
It's going to have it's a comprehensive sort of look at the Mothman phenomenon. And so it's going to include Point Pleasant, but it's also going to include all this Midwest stuff and sightings further afield than that,
So, if you're one of the lead investigators on the modern day Mothman sightings, I think it's pretty safe to assume that you know your shit when it comes to Mothman in general, right?
I guess as much as anybody could. Sure.
Well, don't say that, because some people don't really know any. Well, we know that, right? We know the lore behind it. We know what the general population thinks about the Mothman.
Right.
And most of what they know is, let's be honest, it's just not correct.
Right. Yes.
So, yeah, I think that you know more than most. I'll say that.
Sure. I just meant that nobody could really know the source
unless
of
you are
the phenomenon.
Mothman probably knows.
Right. Maybe I am Mothman. Like, I just pull off my mask and there's Mothman underneath.
At the end of the episode, like, that's the big reveal.
That'd be amazing. I wish.
You are Mothman. So let's get into it. Like I said, we invited people to ask questions. Some of you guys are very, very new to all this. You're just now seeing Tobias because of the Unsolved Mysteries episode. So welcome. Glad to have you here. Maybe you'll come back. We'll see. So question 1, I'm just going to kind of read off some of the people we know, some we don't. But this one comes from our mutual friend, Heather Mosier.
Yay.
Hello, Heather. Heather asks, are there any stories that are outside of the norm encounter-wise? She says, in parentheses, thinking of the humanoid without wings mentioned in Unsolved Mysteries. and any unique colorations or anything of that sort.
Oh yeah, sure. So I'm reminded immediately of McGuanago, Wisconsin, 2017. I think it was the spring of 2017. A gentleman said that he saw a winged bat dragon in his driveway. And this was one where Emily and I actually were able to go out and interview him in person. And he showed us around the sighting area. And he said that one night he was sitting in his van finishing a conversation on the phone with his friend after arriving home late. And since he was staying with his parents, he didn't want to go inside. And he noticed a silhouette standing in front of the van during his conversation. And the only lighting out there was a small lamp at the end of their driveway, probably 50 feet away from where this van was. And so he couldn't make out a lot of detail. He just saw the silhouette. So he turns the headlights on and he sees what he would later describe to me as a winged bat dragon. He said it had these leathery wings, sort of bat-like wings, but that its skin was scaly, more like a reptile, and it had these huge black eyes. And so that was different than many of the other Mothman witnesses or winged humanoid witnesses that I had spoken to. There have been other variations, of course. There was in Woodstock, Illinois, there was a man who said that he had seen a large hairy humanoid, very similar to like a Bigfoot. So if you're picturing Bigfoot, you're not far off, with large leathery wings. And so that is different from what a lot of people will report. I spoke to a gentleman down in Springfield, Illinois. So that's pretty far south. If you're not familiar with the geography of Illinois, it's relatively distant from like the Chicago or northern or northeastern portion of that state, where you tend to get sort of clusters of sightings reported. But anyway, so this guy down in Springfield told me about being chased by a humanoid on a flying scooter. He said that during this encounter, the woods that he was in also seemed to come alive, as though like the trees were going to grab him and impede his movement. So that was unusual. Boy, what else weird? I spoke to a lady in Cape Girardeau, Missouri, who said that she saw this winged creature that was more or less like just a mass of wings. Kind of reminded me of the descriptions of biblical angels, where they just look all fucking crazy.
Yeah, that's my favorite kind.
Right. Yeah. Right. That's yeah. Agreed. So yeah, that was really weird. I'm sure there are others that I am forgetting. But off the top of my head, those are some that stuck out. So yeah, there has been some variation, and there always has been. I think that goes all the way back to Point Pleasant. In the public consciousness, people sort of have this idea of what Mothman is supposed to look like, but reports really have never been all that consistent. There have always been changes in color, like size and coloration and things like that. Different qualities that people have described, or different species that they have compared what they saw to try to make sense of it. Be that bird or bat-like. So yeah, I mean, there's always some variation, but yeah, the outliers, like the real true outliers, can get pretty nuts.
Yeah, we'll talk about the red eyes for a second. Those aren't always reported in Mothman sightings, actually.
Right.
Like that's not It doesn't have to have red eyes to be Mothman. It just seems to be a very popular, not a popular, but an easily identifiable
Yeah.
factor that people think about whenever they think about the Mothman. And reports of like white Mothman or tan Mothman, I mean, those have been around since the Mothman has been around. Like, that's not
Right.
unusual either. And then of course you've got the variances of the wings themselves. What kind of wings? Are they leathery? Are they feathered? Are they moth-like, right? They butterfly-like? What? I don't think they ever have been. I've never gotten a report that they are actually moth wings. It's always either been
No.
feathery or bat-like. And I think when I did, I made like a chart one day of all of the Point Pleasant sightings, and it's got like different characteristics of markers. I found that the feathery wings ended up being the more popular than the batwing.
Hmm.
So does it mean anything? Probably not. No, just like I don't think the color really means much, right? Well, if it's
Sure.
white, how can it be Mothman? Well, it just is.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. None of it really makes sense, but
Right.
that doesn't take away from people's experiences.
No.
They're still having them. And when I say those outliers are nuts, I don't mean like the people seeing it are crazy or anything. If that sounded, like I was making fun of anybody, that was not what I meant at all. It's just that they're fucking wild, like they are really, really, really weird.
The
And
variances run deep,
yeah,
you
so
know. But
interesting stuff.
very nice. Very nice. This one is from fan of the show, Wes. Wes says, which do you find more creepy? The presence of the actual Mothman or the voice of original host Robert Stack?
Well, the dulcet tones of Robert Stack are welcome in my ear holes anytime.
I agree.
So I would have to say Mothman is way creepier.
Yeah, Robert Stack is very relaxing.
He is. He has a great voice. Well, he had a great voice.
That's yeah, and I think it's the music that made it seem ominous, right?
That's fair.
If you put his voice up against the soundtrack of like a creek or something, it'd be fine.
Sure. I think we just like creepy shit too, as part of it.
That's true. That's a good point. This one, of course, comes from, I don't know this guy, Adam. I'm not sure who that is. But
Eesh.
anyway,
It's not a good name. I already don't trust it.
yeah, some guy, Adam. He says, what was it like working directly with the one and only Robert Stack? Did he take you out to lunch after filming and spill his hidden knowledge of the universe?
Dude, whatever, Adam. Yeah, so obviously this is Adam Benedict, because who else would ever ask this fucking question? So obviously none of that happened, because it can't happen, because Robert Stack is dead, unfortunately. I wish that'd be. Oh man, that I would have loved to meet Robert Stack. Although I heard he didn't like the paranormal episodes very much, so it's probably better this way, because I would hate to be on the show and like disappoint him, because he's just like, oh, Mothman guy, that shit's stupid.
Really, I didn't. Well, I just watched a documentary about Unsolved Mysteries. Kind of, I mean, it was within the last week, and man, they all had some fucking fantastic things to say about Robert Stack. They said he was just a real genuine dude.
Oh yeah, I
Like,
bet he's awesome. I just think he was like a real true crime guy.
yeah, I think
So he was
too.
probably like, oh, all that paranormal stuff, that's all nonsense.
It's like,
And
this
I
is
just
why.
can't take that, because I would be like, no, I need you to like me. You're fucking Robert Stack.
Yeah. Yeah. So, the next one I have might be, I don't know how familiar you are with it, but it's from our friend of the show, Drew. It's
Okay.
kind of a two-parter. Drew says, a hats and plaid is sort of your trademark look. Do you do the podcast with that on as well? I imagine you do.
I am actually totally nude. Every no. That'd be hilarious.
You get better acoustics that way.
It's true. Yeah, just like grease yourself up, totally nude. It's just really, really high sound quality. No, I don't dress up for the podcast because we don't do video currently. I might consider it. No, I don't have like a signature look that I put thought into. What I have is practical clothing that I wear for a specific purpose. And so if I'm going to be outside a lot, then I'm going to wear my hat because it does two things. It keeps the sun out of my eyes and it keeps the rain off my head. And those are both very, very valuable things for me personally. And if it's a little chilly outside, I'll probably wear a flannel. And I have one that is my favorite one that just happens to be red, but it's really comfortable. And so I do wear it a lot. But like those aren't deliberate style choices. Like at no point was I like, I got to brand myself as the guy who wears this, you know?
Well, some people do,
Some people do, but I'm not that deep, you know? Like I wear practical clothing for the situation. And so when we were filming, I knew we were going to be outside. We were going to do a lot of filming on site and things. And so I was just like, well, I'm just going to wear what I would wear on an investigation, you know, like that makes sense to me because we're going to be outside a ton. So that's what I did.
Well, flannel is great outdoor wear. And if I'm not I think did you guys film in the fall or was it in the summer?
It was early summer, but it was unusually chilly, actually.
Yeah, well,
for that time of year.
So you take your flannel, right, in case you're cold. Then if you get warm, you just tie it around your waist or whatever. So easy.
Yeah, just take it off.
Yeah, no, that's right. Just take it off. But his other question is a more serious question. He's got. He says, "I'd like to know more about your experiences and how similar they are to mine." Tobias, I don't know if you're familiar with Drew's history. And his experiences, you may or may not be. I am very familiar with them. As a matter of fact, we interviewed him for Fringes of Reality. If anybody's listening, if you want to go listen to Drew's show, you can. It's listed under Drew S.
Okay.
But at minimum, if you don't know about them, that's okay. You can at least share your experiences.
Okay. Well, I mean, is there like a category of experience that you would put his stuff into?
He definitely deals with a lot of like nighttime entities.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's something I have a lot of experience with. Mm-hmm. So from a very young age, and I would have got into more detail about this on Unsolved Mysteries, but obviously like that's not what the episode was about, you know? But yeah, from a very young age, I have experienced paranormal phenomena, and it would often happen at night. And when I was very young, some of my earliest memories are of this phenomena, and being terrified to go to bed because I knew that's when these things were going to happen. And so it would be things basically coming for me in the night. Like I might wake up to hands pressing in on my blankets that I had pulled over my head, or feeling something digging painfully into my sides, or lifting me out of bed. And these are early fragments of memories from 2, 3, 4 years old, before I think my brain or mind was capable of like fully forming long-term memories, right? And that just progressed throughout the years. It actually still happens. It's infrequent, but it does happen. It's been several years, probably 4-ish years or so since the last event. And I've talked about this publicly before. One of the most impactful was when I was in my early 20s and I was living at home. I was kind of, just in my early 20s. So trying to decide what the fuck I wanted to do. Right. And so I moved back home and I went to bed normally one night, and I woke up very suddenly with no real idea right away why I should be awake. Like there was no obvious stimulus that should have woken me up. And I'm looking around my room, and we're in the suburbs. This is Sun Prairie, Wisconsin. So it's, just outside of Madison. And being the suburbs, like it's relatively well lit even at night. And so there was ambient light coming in through my bedroom window, enough for my eyes to quickly adjust and me being able to see everything that was in my room. And so I look around and everything's where it's supposed to be. But I realized that my vantage point is skewed, like it's weird. And that's when I realized that I'm floating several feet above my bed. And I look to my left. I'm not paralyzed. I could move because I'm moving my head around. And in that moment, I decided it probably wasn't a good idea to move very much. So I only moved my head. I didn't move my arms or legs or anything because I didn't know what the fuck was going to happen if I did. And I turned my head, and next to me is this silhouette of a man. It just looked like the shadow of a human male, like completely devoid of features, solid black. And I get the distinct impression that I'm not supposed to be awake for this. And it felt like I was interrupting something. And so this thing, whatever it was, it reaches its hand out and places it on my chest. And I always interpreted that as being comforting, but I don't really know. I have no way to guess this thing's motivation, right? And so it places its hand on my chest, and I'm lowered back down to my bed, and then it just vanishes, And so I'm lying there just like, well, what the fuck, right? That was weird. And I realize, of course, that I'm like on top of my covers, and I certainly hadn't fallen asleep that way. And it was all very strange, but I just, I was like, well, I thought about it for a while, and I was like, well, that was super fucking weird, but there's nothing I can do about it. And so I just went back to sleep. And for anybody, like, I know what people are thinking. So for anybody who thinks that's weird, and how could you go back to sleep after that? You have to understand, at this point, I'm 20 plus years into this shit happening to me, right? If I felt like if I was going to be hurt, I would have been hurt by then. I had learned years and years ago that it was pointless to wake up my parents because all that got was fucking grumpy parents. Like, what were they going to do about it? And so I just had gotten used to it, I think. And so it didn't scare me in the way that it used to when I was a kid. It was just one of those things where you'd be like, okay, well, that was fucking weird, but I guess I'll just try to get some sleep. And that's what I did. So that's a good example of the kinds of personal experiences that I've dealt with throughout my life. I've seen plenty of weird shit on investigations. So everything from shadow people to anomalous balls of light, to weird messages through spirit boxes and lights turning on and off, weird electrical glitches in equipment and things, like Emily's camera flash going off, even though it doesn't have any batteries in it. That was fucking weird and impossible. So I don't know what that was about, but it was paranormal because it's weird as shit. So yeah, I've experienced a lot of that stuff too, but my personal stuff has always revolved around these kinds of intrusions. It's almost like being observed or studied in a way, So yeah, no, it's fucking weird.
I think that Drew is going to be pleased with that answer. Does that sound familiar to you, buddy? Because he's had definitely very similar experiences.
Sure.
So
I've talked to other people now who have too, and these are people that I've talked to that didn't know anything about me. That I've talked to after I had already really written about some of my experiences too. So it's just mind blowing to me to see some of the similarities. Like I remember speaking to a woman up in Minnesota whose grandson who has the same name as me, was or is going through something very, very similar. And I was just like, that kid, that's fucking me. That's me. Yeah. When I was a kid, that's what happened. That same fucking thing, and it's all so weird, but also so deliberate, like it's like these shadow people or these things or whatever the fuck they are, just watch certain people for some reason. Like they have a vested interest in whatever the fuck they're doing to us or whatever the point is. I don't know, but it's like they just focus on certain people for some reason.
I feel like shadow people are very, I don't want to say popular, but common.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a more common phenomena than UFOs. It's more common than Bigfoot, or at least it seems to be. It's hard to tell because we don't have accurate reporting, as you know,
Right.
or great databases for this type of stuff. But I just feel like the amount of shadow people encounters that I receive is just great compared to some of the other stuff. So,
It is a
um,
lot. It's a hell of a lot. And I think it serves as kind of a paranormal cipher in a way where people just project whatever their beliefs and biases are onto that phenomenon. Because if you're into ghosts, you're going to look at shadow people and be like, oh, those are ghosts or spirits or demons or whatever. If you're into UFOs, you're going to look at a case like mine and be like, well, you were abducted, you
right,
know? And it's just, yeah, it's fascinating to me just from that particular perspective, like that, like just watching that sort of element of folklore in action as people impose these narratives on a phenomenon that we don't fucking understand even a little, you
well,
know?
and then on the flip side of that, you've got psychology that says it's sleep paralysis, it's sleep deprivation, it's
Right.
stressful times and situations, it's trauma, which is so dismissive. But
There's a circular logic there where
yeah,
they go, okay, oh, you saw a shadow person. Well, that was sleep paralysis. Oh, and how do I know that you had sleep paralysis? You saw a shadow person,
right. Yep.
and it's like, well, that's fuck you, like that's shitty circular logic. Like that doesn't prove anything. You're just dismissing it.
Right, which
So,
isn't to say that sleep paralysis isn't a thing. It is. It's
sure.
just that because science found that explanation, they just stick with that, and that is the one and only explanation. And is that the case? Probably not. You
Yeah,
know.
it's the weather balloon
Yes.
of shadow people, sleep
Yeah.
paralysis. Like I wasn't paralyzed, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it went on way longer than a hallucination. Like I'm familiar with hypnagogic and hypnopompic hallucinations, and how those work, and they don't last as long as this when you are not suffering from sleep paralysis,
Yeah.
which I was not because I wasn't fucking paralyzed.
Yeah.
So
Well, but you were too afraid to know better. I'm just, it's
right,
just such an
it's
easy, like you said,
yeah.
the weather balloon of, shadow people.
Right. People who want to dismiss it will. And
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. I recognize that I don't have any proof, which is why I don't really talk about it unless people ask, because it's personal and I don't have any proof. And that means that if somebody doesn't want to believe me, that's their right. And I just have to be okay with it. And I am.
Yep.
As long as they're respectful about it, that's fine. Of course, believe what you got to believe. I totally get it. And I would never ask somebody to believe something without evidence, so it just is what it is. But the people who want to try to convince me of an explanation that is contrary to my experience, I don't have time for that.
Yeah. Absolutely. But the same can be said for people that, do believe in the paranormal and they're telling you it's a demon or something
Oh
too.
yeah, fuck that shit too.
Just stop trying to tell people what they experience. Just let them be. Let them
Yeah,
have their experience.
if you don't have good evidence, um, just it's okay to say you don't know.
Yeah.
If you don't have good evidence, you're doing more harm than good by trying to explain things based just off your personal belief and biases. Like knock that shit off.
Yeah. Well, a great segue into the next question. This is from Zoe. Zoe asks, she just first says, there's usually some official explanation of what something is, going on to quote weather balloon, right, as UFOs.
Sure.
What is the prevailing explanation for the Mothman, and do they always have red glowing eyes?
Well, we already covered the red glowing eyes. So no, they do not always have red glowing eyes. The prevailing explanation, I would say, for Mothman sighting, skeptical explanation, is probably misidentified birds, and that goes all the way back to the '60s with like the sandhill crane hypothesis, right? That is complicated because I have received reports that were misidentified birds. I have, but they're not the same as the reports that I think could be paranormal phenomena, right? So you need to have some level of nuance in your approach to this subject to be able to discern from the profile of sightings that represent misidentification. So, your daylight sightings where people see something flying and it's pretty far away and they don't really recognize what it is. And there's nothing else weird about it. Like there's no other associated paranormal phenomena or anything. That's your basic profile for misidentified birds. Now that's very different from your basic profile for a paranormal sighting, where it's generally at night. The witness is relatively close to the entity. They get a decent look at it, enough to be sure of what they're seeing. They will describe often features that couldn't belong to a bird. That's where you get into like the weird bat-like wings or glowing red eyes, or really being able to at least semi-accurately estimate the size of the thing as being way too fucking big to be a bird. If it's 6 or 7 feet tall, and then often associated paranormal phenomena could be a feeling of being hypnotized or extreme fear or a palpable sense of evil, or maybe they experience some kind of parapsychological effect in the moment, or they have a UFO sighting, or they experience poltergeist phenomena or similar, like signs of a haunting or something in their home afterward, or something similar. There's a wide variety of weird paranormal shit that can be associated with these. And so that's, sort of your paranormal profile, and they are very different things. And so some of them, while certainly birds, doesn't mean that all of them are birds. But not everybody is necessarily capable, I guess, of that level of nuance. So yeah, birds. That's the weather balloon of fucking Mothman sighting. It's totally birds.
What about those weird like wingsuits that people use?
That's been tossed out before. It doesn't make a lot of sense in context, and so I don't think that it caught on very much as a skeptical explanation, just because people wouldn't have been using them in the areas where these sightings took place, and also couldn't have used them to perform the kinds of maneuvers people were describing. So sometimes people will use that as a comparison. They'll say, oh, it looked kind of like a guy in a wingsuit, or at least at first I thought maybe it was a guy in a wingsuit or something similar. So you'll see that as a comparison, just like you'll see people comparing it to figures from popular culture, like the monster from Jeepers Creepers or something similar, But that just never caught on quite as much in terms of skeptical explanations, just because it is almost as seemingly impossible as the existence of Mothman.
Yeah, it just is very silly. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, right? And especially with the variance of sightings, So I agree with you. All right. Well, let's go here. This next one's from Brett. Brett says, "What about vampires? The lady said bat wings. If this proves vampires, this explains a lot."
Well, if it was vampires, I would expect us to be getting a lot more reports out of Dayton, Ohio.
Right.
Which, as we know, is the vampire capital of the Midwest.
Yeah.
No.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, that's a cool idea. There are no bad ideas in brainstorming. But what I would caution would be trying to explain one mystery with another. And so we don't know that vampires are real, and I think many of the elements of vampires that you might associate with the Mothman phenomenon could come from popular culture and not necessarily uh, the folklore surrounding vampires and vampire experiences. So I think the link there would be tenuous at best, but fundamentally, I think that we should refrain from trying to explain one mystery with another. I don't think that that's a particularly fruitful line of inquiry most of the time. So, uh, vampires would get the same response generally from me as almost any other thing like that, where maybe, I mean, I don't know, maybe, probably not, but maybe.
Yeah, I don't know how old the folklore of vampires having wings might be. Um, we can kind of see like winged vampires and a lot more, fantasy roles and stuff like that. It's not a terrible trope, but it's not a common trope either. So when did that start? And if I read a report from, we'll just say, like, I don't know, 1600s, that said that somebody encountered a vampire with wings, I think that my mind would probably just go to general, oh, winged humanoid, rather than that explains the Mothman.
Right. Yeah, certainly. I think that in European folklore, I don't know. I have no idea if
Yeah.
vampires have ever been described with wings. Other parts of the world, I think they have. But I don't know how likely those stories are to impact people's perception here. Um, from a pop culture standpoint, Bram Stoker's Dracula, like that movie, featured Dracula looking like a bat monster with wings. Marcus from Underworld. So those movies, they had winged bat monster vampires, and there are a bunch of other vampire movies that feature similar stuff. And so, at a certain point, I think it just caught on in Hollywood. Like, hey, vampires as bat monsters, that's fucking cool, right? Like that's going to look really good in a movie. And so that's why I would be reluctant, even more reluctant beyond trying to explain one mystery with another. I would be especially reluctant because when it comes to vampires specifically, so much of what people think they know about them just comes from pop culture with very little, like just very, 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 very few roots in folklore. And folklore in and of itself is sort of the popular culture of its time. If you look at storytelling as a form of entertainment, then a lot of the old stories that we have about monsters and things, that even if people believed in them, and thought they were true, or at least thought that the monsters might exist, it's still a form of pop culture, and storytelling as entertainment means that we have to question the overall veracity of those stories and how really accurate they were in describing any particular phenomenon. So, yeah, it gets really murky really, really quickly.
Why not vampires? Sure.
Yeah, fucking A. I like vampires. That's cool.
Sounds good. Next up, we got Jeremy. Jeremy says, some believe that the Mothman was a curse from the Indian chief Cornstalk that was murdered in the fort. What is your take on that?
I don't think that is accurate. In that, I don't think that Mothman is the result of a Native American curse. I think that how do I put this? I want to put it kind of delicately. I think that idea stems from good old fashioned American racism, and I don't think we should give it a lot of credence, frankly. So yes, I guess I don't know that I have much more to say on the subject other than no, I do not think they are connected.
I'll step in a little bit. Just because I've spent a lot of time in that area and a lot of
Hmm.
time with the people in that area. And one thing that is a part of Appalachian culture, particularly in West Virginia, is that unfortunately the death of Chief Cornstalk, which was very unjust. For people that don't know, Chief Cornstalk was murdered because he was going to warn the white people of the tribe that was going to come and attack them, and they mistook him for one of their people, so they killed him. Is the short version of it. So of course, if ghosts are dead people, I'm sure he's pissed, right? But
Sure.
the curse of Chief Cornstalk is essentially to blame for anything and everything that goes bad in that area. And that's really unfortunate. It's just a very simple way for people to not really be held accountable for like the dying mining industry in the area, right? The loss of jobs, and this sounds bad. I love people in Appalachia, I really do, but it's to account for the drug problem in the area. Just anything and everything that's bad, it's because of Chief Cornstalk. It's because they can't get ahead because they were already doomed to not get ahead, and that's just not accurate. After Cornstalk died, they had a really booming economy and booming business. It's just that if you're unwilling to change with the times, and unfortunately, you stay behind and you're not really going to get anywhere. It's just the way it is. Everybody knows that. And, again, I'm not digging at the people of Appalachia, not at all. Some of the nicest fucking people I've ever met in my entire life. But that is just the reality of it. If a tornado hits, it's cornstalk. It doesn't matter what it is. It's a very easy excuse to kind of throw out there. And it's very much just a part of the folklore in the area. So, I'm with
Sure.
you, Tobias. I don't think that this has anything to do with that event.
Right. Yeah, I didn't. Yeah, I didn't know how much I really wanted to get into it.
That's okay.
Because yeah, well, because I didn't want to insult anybody either. But yeah, I mean, since we're just doing it, like it's fine. The reason that you see a lot of these kinds of stories about Native Americans is because of racism, just straight up racism,
It is.
and this othering of indigenous peoples. And so you will often see things like, curses and such associated with the indigenous people. Um, and again, it stems from this sort of racist othering, this placing them as in an outsider, um, and othering them like to the point where they are given like magic powers and shit. And it's not always as negative as a curse. Sometimes you'll see the racism of the noble savage or something, where they are these people are used as just more or less props in white stories to convey the idea of the past as being simpler and thus better, although that was never true, or as this sort of closeness to nature and this sort of simple wisdom and stuff, and it's all equally racist, and people shouldn't fucking do it, but you do see it all the time, and this is an unfortunate example of that, which is why I wish it would go away.
Yeah.
And I don't. Yeah, I mean, Asherz put it perfectly, in her description, and I don't think much more needs to be said about that and its place in local culture. But more than that, I think it's something that we should actively push back on. It's like if you ever see somebody talking about like an ancient Native American burial ground or something, it's that same kind of just racist bullshit, you
Yeah.
know. Um, where, people set up indigenous peoples to be feared, basically, to say, to other them in a way that gives them an excuse to be afraid of them, which is awful racist behavior, and we shouldn't participate in it.
Yeah. I mean, technically, every inch of the earth is some type of ancient burial ground.
Yeah.
So many people have died here. So
you might be able to convince me that just the entire planet is cursed. I would, I might buy that.
It could be. That's it. That's the mystery solved. Yeah, we can.
Nice.
We can definitely. We can backtrack where the Chief of Cornstalk curse came from. It came from a play. It just like Tobias said, it came from just an old white person's story to make it a little more interesting. And that's it. That's all it is.
Right. And so, and I want to be clear. I am not saying anything negative about the person who asked this question. I think it is a legitimate question that was asked in good faith, and there's nothing wrong with asking questions. And so nobody should insult the person who asked this question. I'm glad that they did, because it needs to be addressed as often as it comes up. And I don't think there's anything inadvertently racist about asking that question. Yeah, I just want to be clear about that. I'm not saying anything about the questioner. Just, we have to be clear that the Chief Cornstalk myth comes from pretty solid foundation of racism.
Yeah. Yes. So, right. Absolutely. We have to talk about this. It's a huge part of the lore. It's got to be addressed, On to the next question is from Elizabeth. She asks, which you did link, but we'll link it in the description, and I'll let you talk about it a little bit more. Where do we find the maps indicating the sightings?
Sure. So you can find those if you go. I think the easiest way to do it, honestly, go to the timeline over at the Singular Fortean Society website. So the URL for the Singular Fortean Society website is singularfortean.com. So SINGULARFORTEAN.com. And once you're on the homepage, if you scroll like halfway down, you'll see a link to the Lake Michigan Mothman timeline. If you click on that, you're going to see this huge timeline that has all of the different sightings listed in order, chronological order, because it's a timeline. But also, just before that, you're going to see some descriptive text, and it's going to have links to other things in there that didn't really fit into the timeline. And one of those is going to be a link to the map that was put together by Lon Strickler, of course. And so I think that's the easiest way for me to tell people how to get to it. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's pretty easy to find. Just go to our timeline and start reading, and you'll find it, no problem. It's towards the top.
And, like I said, we'll link it here in the description. That way you guys can just hop on the description of the episode, click on it there. Right. The timeline is a really fantastic resource. Good on you for putting that together, because,
thank you.
And then good on Lon for doing the map. And then to be clear, the timeline and the map, they are specific to the Lake Michigan Mothman stuff.
Yeah.
So they don't include, it's not a comprehensive history of everything. Could Tobias eventually do a timeline of everything? Sure. But, time is money. So.
Yeah, that would be quite an undertaking, and certainly something to consider, because people have asked that. Actually, recently, someone asked me about that, just specifically talking about the map, like if anybody had ever made a map of every sighting. And I was like, I fucking wish, but no.
Yeah,
not that I've ever seen.
But it becomes a lot.
It is a lot, yeah.
So I gave up. Will I ever do it? I can't say I'll never do it ever again, but I'm not making any promises. So
Right. What we need is like a cartographer or a data scientist or something who, like, that's their jam, to come in, and I'll give them everything that I have.
Really? Because I have a cartographer.
Good.
We can do that. We can make that happen.
Good.
Don't threaten me.
And then they should make the map for us, and then I'll buy a poster of it and hang it on my wall.
and he will. That's exactly what he does. Yeah, don't threaten me with a good time, Tobias. It will be had.
Yeah. Hey, I'm not just spitting in the wind here. I think that would be fucking awesome. I think we should totally do it.
If you guys want a map, you just let us know, and if you would like this, I'm probably going to do it anyway. We'll talk.
Sure.
Anyway.
Okay.
Next question comes from Ashley, not me. She says, "Are you familiar with Indrid Cold?"
What? Who?
I never heard of that guy.
No. Yeah, of course. Yeah. Not as familiar as Asherz, of course, but I am familiar with the story. So, I mean, boy, there's a lot to it, but I guess for anybody who isn't familiar with it, the way that it became part of the Mothman lore, right, is because John Keel elected to include the story of Woodrow Derenberger and his encounter with the man from Lanulos in the Mothman Prophecies book, and sort of implied that it could be connected to Mothman sightings. So yes, I am definitely familiar with it. There was no other question there, but I'll answer some anticipated questions, or maybe some implied questions, or even some imagined questions that I'm just going to make up that I think could have been involved in the motivation behind asking that one.
If other news places did exactly what you just did at the beginning of their articles, they'd be more respectful. Right. Anyway, go ahead.
Wouldn't that be nice? But yeah, I mean, do I think that there is a connection between Indrid Cold and the Mothman phenomenon? I mean, I have no idea. I don't think there is any good evidence to show a causal connection between those two things. I think that John Keel was very much of a Fordian mindset. I mean, there's no denying the influence that Charles Fort had on John Keel. He talks about him all the fucking time in his books. And so I think that he very much took a kitchen sink approach to his Mothman investigation and wove a narrative around and including every weird fucking thing to happen in Ohio and West Virginia and other places. Actually, he goes all the way up the East Coast and shit. He wove this narrative, including and around all of it, because of that sort of Fordian philosophy of inclusivity when it comes to these phenomena. And so if you're not familiar with Charles Fort, what he liked to do, he was an early 20th century collector of weird news stories. And so he would take all these weird news stories and things from all over the world, and he would compile them in these books that he would write, and he would sort of speculate about what might be behind them or any connections and things. And he was something of an iconoclast, right? Like, he really pushed back against the establishment at that time. He had very little respect for what he saw as the dogmatic thinking of both mainstream science and religion. And so I think that that transferred to Keel. And so that's part of how he got to his ultra-terrestrial hypothesis. I think that's part of how he got to the super spectrum in his description of how ultra-terrestrials could exist. And I think that's why he included everything that happened anywhere within, several states and so that just as many years around the Mothman sightings in that area in his book. I think it was sort of out of a sense of duty as a Fordian to try to include everything or as much as possible, because in doing so, then hopefully people can draw conclusions that maybe he missed, or at least it'll give people an idea of what the big picture might be. But I think the unfortunate consequence when that is done is that people latch on to things that aren't necessarily related, and they find connections that don't necessarily exist, because people have a tendency when they read about something in a book to just kind of take it as gospel. And so the fact that Indrid Cold is in the Mothman prophecies is enough for some people to say definitively that there is a strong and important connection there, when I don't know that to be true. And I don't think that was ever the point. I don't think that's ever what Keel was saying you had to believe. I think he was just pointing out that two weird things happened kind of in the same area.
Yeah. Well, but the Mothman Prophecies movie kind of fueled that fire, right? I mean,
Sure.
there was more Indrid Cold in it than there was Mothman. Let's be honest.
Yeah, well, yeah, for sure. Like I just talked to Richard Hatem couple weeks ago. No,
Yeah.
maybe like 4 or 5 days ago, and that came up. And I like Richard. He's a super nice guy, and I think he's a talented writer.
I've heard he really knows his shit when it comes to this topic.
He does. He really does. And so, yeah, I mean, we talked about this specifically, and, he had to write a movie or a screenplay for a movie that people would watch. And that meant there's no direct adaptation of what Keel wrote that's going to make a movie that is going to make any sense to a mainstream audience that people are going to be able to watch. It's just not going to happen. And so what he wanted to do then, of course, was convey the experience of encountering high strangeness. And I think the movie succeeds at that. But of course, has been this side effect of people watching the movie and not understanding, because it's based on a true story, that there was a lot of freedom taken in the overall writing of the screenplay. And so they can't take for granted that anything in the movie actually happened in real life. So yeah, you get everything from sort of an increased importance on Indrid Cold to the Blackbird of Chernobyl, which I would love it if somebody could trace that particular bit of lore back to before this movie, but I bet you fucking can't, because nobody can.
Yeah, nobody can.
It was invented for the movie.
Yep. It sure was. Now, obviously, I guess I'll just say my short answer. I can only go based off of Indrid's word, and I have only ever gotten Indrid's word from Tanya Derenberger, and Indrid says no, he has nothing to do with the Mothman. Didn't know anything about it at the time. Only knows about it because people think that he's connected to it. So that's it.
There you go. That's straight from the horse's mouth.
He says no. Now, can you trust Indrid Cold? I don't know. I've never met the guy yet, so we'll see.
Okay.
But yeah, heavy implications there. That's fine. It's just part of it. It's just part of the lore. This question's really important, and I think that when you answer it, Tobias, you really have to consider the fact that there are true human emotions on the line here, depending on what your answer is. This is from someone who goes by Nate. Nate wants to know, do you think the Mothman would like me?
Oh, boy. Well, I can't answer for the Mothman, but I'll tell you what, Nate. I like you. And that's enough.
And that's enough.
I mean, look, based on, if you want a more serious answer than that, based on the Mothman, like the behavior of Mothman or, any of these winged humanoids, they don't fucking like anybody. They don't like a single person, because all they do is terrify people and try to scare them off and just generally run amok with people's emotions. So, no, I mean, they don't like you. They don't like me. They don't like anyone.
Nate says that he can change them because he's got good vibes.
That's fine. I mean, that's what everybody in an abusive relationship thinks at first, but
I shouldn't laugh. That's,
I
that's
know. I was just
very
like,
serious,
well,
but
it is what it is.
but it is true. Yeah. Well, I don't know. I disagree with you, Tobias. They're chasing people down. I think Mothman are just trying to make friends.
Okay. They're just terrible at it.
Right. They just have no people skills because they're
Right?
not
Why does
people.
everybody run from me? Come
So,
back. I love you.
Nate, as long as you don't run, I think you'll be okay.
Sure.
It's all,
They're not spreading their wings to fly. They're just trying to hug you.
exactly.
Stop running.
And then they just make terrible screeching noises because they also don't know how to talk. It's fine.
That's probably Mothman for stop running and give me a hug.
Very simple. All right, this one we kind of touched on a little bit, but for the sake of answering it, see if there's anything more in depth. This is from Creaky. They said, "Have you ever had reports of an all-white Mothman-like sighting?" They also said that they sent you something on your website with their experience. I don't know if you've gotten back to them or not, but
I'll address the second part first. For anybody who's listening, I am doing my best to try to respond to all of the emails and messages I've received. It's going to take a long time. So if you haven't received a response yet, I apologize. I will get to it. Just please be patient. And when I say I will get to it, I mean it could take a week or two, frankly, because that is how overloaded I am. But I am committed to respecting your time and mine, and I will get back to you eventually. In terms of all white, yeah, I had a report from California some years ago where somebody described this all white winged humanoid creature. It was an interesting sighting, actually. It took place around Halloween, and the witness, had just come home from a Halloween party where they were not drinking. I asked, and a suspicious fog had rolled in their cul-de-sac where they lived, and they saw this white winged humanoid thing, and it had, I think they described it as having sort of avian features, right? And they didn't see it flying. They saw it running through this fog, but it had wings and everything. But for whatever reason, it's running through the fog. So that was weird, but yeah, that was all white. I can't think of any other ones that I've received off the top of my head, but you got to understand, I've received dozens and dozens of these. So it's possible I have another all white one, but that's a confirmed all white one that I remember off the top of my head. So yes.
yeah, they're out there for sure. This one is from Fear the Cryptid. They said, "I've heard stories in the past where after seeing Mothman, witnesses claim that strange activity follows them back to their homes and tortures them for years after. During your research, did you come across any indications of this or witnesses that had this happen?"
Yes. Yeah, definitely. I had a family in Madison, Wisconsin, whose apartment was haunted. Actually haunted seemingly partially by Mothman. So they had a sighting after their apartment had burned down, and so they were temporarily staying in another apartment while their other one was being rebuilt. And during that time, the mother and daughter had a Mothman sighting while they were out driving. And after that, the mother saw it again. This black, red-eyed, winged monster that she had seen while driving. She saw in the laundry room of their apartment building once it had been rebuilt. And so this apartment building, as well, was known for paranormal phenomena. So this family had experienced paranormal phenomena there ongoing. And so they would experience things like phantom babies crying, which should be familiar to anybody who's read the Mothman prophecies. They would hear the sound of all of the dishes being thrown out of their cupboards at night and crashing on the floor, only to run out and find nothing disturbed. And even one instance where a candle seemingly didn't just light itself, but was completely consumed in flame, like was just immolated in a way. So like the wax was on fire, like in a way that is just impossible for a candle to light, so yeah, they encountered all kinds of weird stuff. I remember a woman out in Maryland who was driving with her son, and they saw this winged humanoid. And afterward, this radio they had that had been they had owned it for a long time, and it was totally normal up until the time of their sighting. And then after their sighting, it would just start turning itself on all the time. Just randomly, would just turn on. So that kind of stuff, yeah, definitely. I know that there are plenty of other witnesses who have had similar experiences. Many others, but that's two good examples. Certainly I've had other witnesses who have experienced UFO sightings, poltergeist, other weird poltergeist phenomena in their homes after their sightings, all kinds of shit. Sure.
Very cool. And yeah, I mean, the most famous, not pertaining to this, but is probably Linda Scarberry and their family,
Yeah.
which you can find countless amounts of interviews of her talking about that phenomena later in life.
Yep.
So check that out. Alrighty, so going over some more here. This is from Cassidy. Cassidy says, I found it interesting that one of the witnesses on Unsolved Mysteries saw the creature in 2001, right before 9/11 happened. Could this have been another warning of a tragedy? What are your thoughts?
I don't think so, but that was I know the witness you're talking about, and she's a wonderful person. And in all of my interactions with her, she's been a very, very good witness. And I know that was something that one of her sons had considered and brought up to her, and so it was something that she had taken seriously, especially because she had seen multiple creatures, right? And so that was, like there was sort of a line of thinking where it had happened just before the terror attacks on 9/11, and they thought that maybe each one of these creatures could have represented, a plane or something involved in that. I think that more than anything just illustrates the human ability and need, really, to make connections between things and to apply narratives that allow us to make sense out of these otherwise very mysterious circumstances. But again, is there any causal link between these two things? Is there any direct evidence to point towards any kind of credible connection? No, there is not. And I don't think that they are related. And the reason, I guess the questions you should be asking yourself is like, if this was a warning about the 9/11 attacks, how was scaring the shit out of some poor woman in Berwyn, Illinois, going to do anything about the Twin Towers or the Pentagon or anything else involved, or that poor flight that crashed before it could get to its target? Like what was that going to do? Like, what kind of shitty warning is that? Like, thanks a lot, Mothman. Fucking useless,
Why didn't you just talk to me? My God, I don't.
Right. So again, I get it. And there are some superficial similarities, for entities, for planes involved in those attacks. Sure. I can't prove that it's not related. But since there also isn't any evidence that it is, I would lean towards it being unrelated.
Yeah. Just the topic of Mothman being tied to bad omens or anything. I mean, that's a whole episode in and of itself. But I think we're both on the same page. We agree that there's no direct link between that and
Right.
in any of these sightings. So, but who knows? Maybe he's just a terrible warning system.
Yeah, could just be super incompetent.
So bad at his job. Get it together, Mothman. Damn.
Right.
Um, are there video or photography experts working with you to help analyze any potential evidence you receive during your investigation/interviews?
Oh, yeah, for sure. So, my wife Emily actually has a degree in fine arts photography, and so she has a 4-year degree in photography, and she's been invaluable in examining uh, photographic and video evidence. Not that there's a lot of it in the case of Mothman, but just in general for what we do. We get a lot of UFOs and ghosts and things like that people will send us, and so she is invaluable in examining that kind of stuff. And of course, I know a lot of people in this field, so there are no shortage of other investigators that I can reach out to and sort of gather their opinions on any evidence, and I certainly have, and I will continue to do so. Um, so yeah, I'm very lucky. I have a lot of very very talented, skilled, intelligent people that I can lean on to help look into that kind of evidence.
And this one is from Lily. Lily says, are there any patterns in sightings that you have noted? A particular season, moon cycle, or world events when sightings increase? Also, do you have thoughts around them being ETs?
Okay, no, that's a really good question. So in terms of patterns, there is not a lot of um, there's not a lot to grab onto there, unfortunately. Like there's not a particular type of witness, for instance. There's not a particular kind of circumstance that you can point to in terms of phase of the moon or anything like that. Now, if you want to look at times of the year, then again, like probably spring and summer would be the most popular times when these kinds of experiences are reported, but there are sightings that take place in the wintertime. So it's not exclusive to certain months, but it is most heavily reported in spring and summer. Um, Now, those numbers could be artificially inflated because of misidentified birds, which again are a part of this. They're not the paranormal part, but they are a part of the overall phenomenon in terms of number of reports. So you have to consider that. Now, spring and summer, uh, especially like late summer, um, basically times when you're likely to see like a large migratory bird flying, to and from its winter and summer homes. Yeah, it would make sense to have more sightings during those times, because of the number of misidentified bird sightings that are inevitable. So that's not necessarily related to Mothman. It's not necessarily related to the paranormal stuff, which is, let's face it, like what we largely care about, right? Let me see. Is there any other potential pattern? Maybe the types of just general areas and activities where the creature is, or during which the creature is sighted. So in general, what you're going to have are people just living their lives, like going about their business. Like they're not looking for a fucking Mothman, right? And so they'll be out driving or walking or sitting on their porch or whatever, just normal people stuff, you know? And that's when they have their encounter. And often these encounters will take place near natural areas. So if there is a park or, you know, just a nature area or something nearby, that's where they'll happen. That's true for most monster sightings. So that's not really specific to Mothman. Now, if you want to talk about patterns in descriptions, then yeah, when you're dealing with the paranormal reports, there is some variation, as we have already discussed, but otherwise, generally speaking, you are going to get a creature between like generally 6 to 8 feet tall, with a 12 to 15 foot wingspan, dark in color, sometimes with glowing red eyes, but not always. Often, I would say usually, it's flying without flapping its wings. If somebody does describe it flapping its wings, it'll be like a long and steady, you know, flap, but that's it, and then it's gliding. So gliding is a pattern that you see described by people. So, what else? I think that's everything off the top of my head. And so that may be a less than satisfying answer. And it is something that I've considered. I've thought about this a lot, actually. And one of the things about this phenomenon is that it doesn't really follow a consistent pattern. Like it's not repeatable in a way that makes it easy to study. Like there's no area I could point to where I'd be like, stake out that block, like stake out that park or that nature area, and you'll see Mothman, because it almost never repeats in the exact same place. Almost never. So there is a lack of predictability to this that makes it very difficult to study. And so the only real consistent patterns that we see are in, you know, are very general. So like I said, in like the types of places you might see it, but not necessarily a specific place. In the kinds of things that people are doing. But again, there's no specific activity I could tell you to partake in that would guarantee you or even make it likelier necessarily if you to see Mothman. And then, of course, there are the patterns in people's descriptions, and those are useful to an extent, but they don't help us study the or make predictions. You know, they just help us rule things out, like natural explanations and such. Now, in terms of the extraterrestrial hypothesis, like do I think about that with Mothman? Yeah, I guess. You know, again, it's one of those things where I already talked about this, so I won't spend a lot of time on it again, but I am reluctant to explain one mystery with another. And so for me to say that Mothman is an extraterrestrial would be further than I'm willing to go at this point, because I just don't have enough information to make that kind of determination. What I will say is that the paranormal reports, so those sightings that seem very unlikely to be a misidentified bird, do seem to describe something that is very unlikely to be any kind of undiscovered biological species native to this planet, because it just doesn't make any sense. There's no signs of predation in the areas where this thing lives. How could it exist in a breeding population large enough to maintain itself and still be in these areas but undiscovered? Like, that doesn't make any fucking sense. If it doesn't live in these areas full time and it's migrating, we would see it migrate. So that doesn't make any sense. It biologically shouldn't be able to fly. Its wingspan isn't nearly big enough for something its size to fly. So that doesn't make any sense. So I definitely think whatever it is would be much likelier to be from somewhere else or playing by a different set of rules than the mainstream scientific community has established, for what is supposed to be possible. So there are a lot of UFO sightings in these same areas. There are a good number of witnesses who have had UFO sightings, who have also had Mothman sightings, often in the same area, sometimes in the literal exact same place, in at least one case directly after their Mothman sighting. Although UFO doesn't necessarily mean extraterrestrial spacecraft. So that doesn't mean that there has to be something extraterrestrial necessarily about Mothman. You might subscribe to in the interdimensional hypothesis. You might subscribe to parallel universe hypothesis or something to explain these sightings. And that would be okay if you did, because at this point they're sort of all equally likely, because we don't know enough to say for sure that any one of them is the truth behind what people are seeing.
Yeah, I'll say that the more I dug into it, the less I had an answer.
Yeah, for real.
Initially, I started off with an idea in mind, and then just the more you go down the rabbit hole, you're just like, wow, I didn't know shit. Uh, so,
yeah, no, I mean, it is what it is. I wish that there were more consistent, obvious patterns, but there isn't. It's elusive, and it seems to be something that is pervasive across the continent. Really, I think that when you see a lot of reports from one area, it doesn't necessarily mean that area is more active. I think that it just means that more people in that area are willing to talk about what they have seen.
Yeah, I like to the way that I like to compare it is to dogs. So go to the animal shelter and take a survey of the dogs there. Look at the size, the breed, the color, right? And you write it down on your little paper there. How many brown dogs are there? How many labs are there? How many pit bulls? How many whatever? And you'll see that one of those categories, in all those categories, is going to have the number one answer, right? But it doesn't necessarily mean that there is a larger population of brown dogs, period, across the board. So the shelter is going to be like your flap, right? You take it from that area, you can go, there's the dogs, right? There's your sightings. But then you walk outside of the shelter, and how many dogs do you encounter just walking down the street? How many do you see in people's cars? How many do you see people walking them in their homes, in their yards? And then you get a larger and larger variance of what those dogs might look like. And, at the end of the day, you're still left with information that can kind of be biased, because again, there's always going to be traits that come out on top, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's the gold standard.
Right. Yeah.
So
for sure.
There's just no answers yet. That doesn't mean there never will be, just not yet. John asked Tobias, have you had personal experiences involving Mothman or other flying humanoids?
Maybe. So I've never seen anything that I would declare definitively to be Mothman. But during this investigation, there was a time when I was outside of our apartment. And so we used to live in Madison, and we rented an apartment there. And so we didn't really have a yard for our dog, and so I would walk him quite frequently. Like 3 times a day. He's a dog, he's got to go outside, and so I was out walking him, and we lived on this hill, and it was early evening, like it was dark ish. I never really got that dark in our neighborhood. Well, it got kind of dark, but like we lived in the city, so there's always like some light pollution. And so I remember that I was walking him, and I always looked around a lot because I wanted to make sure nobody would sneak up on us. Not for any nefarious reason, but because, Bullet is a super friendly dog. He always was too friendly with strangers, and I don't like to deal with it. It's, like I'm not out to make fucking friends. Just, go to the bathroom so we can go home. Right. And so I remember looking, and at the top of our hill, standing next to this chain link fence surrounding a park across from the community center, I saw these 3 figures, and they were all black, and they looked shadowy, right? Like shadow people, I guess, right? And but they looked like they had these like hoods and cloaks, and I know that based on that description, you'd be like, well, that's nothing to do with anything, right? But I talked to this retired police officer later, and he told me about a sighting that he had in Chicago back in the 70s when he was a kid. And what he saw was, and the other witnesses have also described this thing in the same way. He saw this person, or what he thought was a person, on this trail next to the North Branch of the Chicago River that looked like they were wearing like a cape or something, he thought at first, until it spread its cape out and flew, right? And so I don't know that is the same as what I saw. I don't know that it was the same thing. I don't know that was wings instead of a cloak or a cape or something, but it is something that I think about after receiving those descriptions from people, because I was deep into our Mothman investigation at that point, so is it outside of the realm of possibility that some part of this phenomenon was keeping an eye on me or something similar? I don't think that it's outside of the realm of possibility. So it could have been related. I have no idea.
Interesting. I didn't know about that.
Yeah, I don't talk about a lot of this stuff very often because I try not to make it about me. And maybe I need to get over that a little bit just to include myself in the narrative, because I probably have had relevant experiences that people should know about, but
Right,
better to err on the side of not being like an attention-seeking douchebag, right?
But you can't preach to all these people about reporting their sightings, Tobias, and then not report your own.
I know. Damn it. You got me there.
Just saying.
Yeah, fair.
Okay, so what's going to happen right now is I'm going to ask you this question, but I have to pee so heckin' bad. So while you're answering, I'm going to go pee, and I'll probably be back before you're done answering. So.
Okay, awesome.
All right. This one comes from Cotton Stuffing. Great name. What about all the doorbell cameras people have now? Anything caught on them?
Okay. Doorbell cameras. I have not seen any doorbell camera footage of any kind of winged humanoid. I did see one exterior like security cam footage, or I should say one security cam video that caught a unusual winged creature on it. And this was down in Illinois, and you'll have to forgive me because the name of the I just found it. Okay, so this was in I think this is pronounced Rantoul, maybe Illinois, spelled Rantoul. I don't know. Most of my family lives in Illinois, and I've never been to this place or heard anybody pronounce it. So, but yeah, Rantoul maybe. 2018, there was a video from a home security camera that caught this large flying creature, and it's all black. It looks kind of bat-like, really, from my perspective. And you can see it like fly in front of this street light, and it's very fast. It looks big, but there aren't a lot of details beyond that. So it's difficult to say if it's related to the Mothman phenomenon at all, but it could be. It certainly could be. But that's the only video that I have that is literally just somebody's home camera that's picked up something that could be related to this. So it's not something that is happening maybe as often as we would imagine, but there are probably good reasons for that. So for instance, those Ring doorbell cameras, they're great at what they do. Like we have one. It's fucking awesome. I think ours might be a different brand, like maybe it's Nest or something instead of Ring, but whatever. It's super cool because we live in an age of miracles where I can talk to whoever's at my door instead of getting up to get the door and like see who they are and shit. It's crazy. But they don't have that much range because they don't need that much range. Like, do you really want your doorbell camera going off like every time a car drives by? Probably not. So something has to be pretty close to set them off. So unless like Mothman is hanging out in your yard or something, chances are your Ring doorbell camera is not gonna catch them. And what I was saying before in answering the question about patterns is, most of these sightings happen away from people's yards. It's like usually somebody will be out driving or walking or going about their business or something. And they will have an encounter in either a relatively remote area, or if it is where, in a place where people live, then it'll be near a, natural area or some kind of park. And I don't mean like a playground park. I mean like,
Mothman's on the swings.
Yeah, right. This Mothman's on the swings. No, like a state park or, a county park or something. Right. And so, yeah, I mean, people just aren't having these kinds of sightings in a place where something like a Ring doorbell camera would capture them, because most people aren't encountering Mothman in their front yard. And in the couple of reports that we've received where this entity has gone through somebody's property like that, it hasn't been captured on any camera or anything. And again, that's probably because it just wasn't in front of their fucking door, close enough to where the camera would actually register it and start recording. So,
Yeah.
But it's a good question.
And that's just, going back to the question that, you just had a little bit, is like about whether or not they're ETs, well, if they were to be caught on like the doorbell cameras, that's assuming that it's terrestrial and it's just hanging out, flying around.
Right.
So it is a good question. I kind of thought that maybe with the doorbell cameras, we'd get a lot more high strangeness on camera, but seems to be about the same amount.
lot of insects
Yes.
that people think are orbs. A lot of that happening.
Yeah. And it's not to say nothing's ever been caught, but I mean, I think it's been just high strangeness in general on these doorbell cameras has been very underwhelming.
Yes. Agreed.
So on to the next one. This one is, I noticed in your work in the episode that there's a lot of activity around Lake Superior. Maybe it's a strange coincidence, but there have been a lot of extraterrestrial happenings around there as well. Is there anything that can explain that? Aligning of planets, ley lines? I've always wondered about that. Also, my 14-year-old is an inspiring, aspiring investigator. Any words of wisdom?
Sure. So, yeah, I mean, there have been a lot of sightings all throughout the Great Lakes region, and there are also a lot of UFO sightings. Uh, as to what would explain those happening, I people talk about different things. Like you'll hear people talk about like the Lake Michigan Triangle and weird sightings within that. But I don't put a lot of stock in it. Any 3 points on a map are a triangle, right? And so you hear about triangles a lot in terms of UFO flaps or monster sightings or whatever. Um, and really, statistically, there is no higher likelihood of something happening within these proposed triangles as there is something happening outside of them. Um, if you do get a larger number of reports from those areas, I think that it's a sort of self-fulfilling prophecy in that they are popularized as areas where these phenomena happen. And so people are likelier to report something that happens within that area. So yeah, I think that explains why. Well, I think that certainly explains why we've received so many sightings out of the Great Lakes region, right? Is because we weren't getting any, and then there were some sightings in Chicago that became very, very popular, or around Chicago that became very, very popular, and those got a lot of attention. And then a lot of people started reporting their sightings because they saw that other people were reporting them. Like one of the most common things that I hear is because, okay, look, like you and I are weird, right? And that's cool. So we've heard of Mothman, we're familiar with John Keel. We're familiar with Point Pleasant and all of that stuff. Most people aren't. Not even most people who are into the paranormal know a fucking Mothman.
Yeah.
Maybe they do now because how popular Mothman has become on the internet, but it's still not super well known. And if you're outside of the paranormal, shit, you don't know who the fuck Mothman is. And so a lot of people would have their sightings, and maybe if they tell anybody at all, they tell like a loved one, like a close friend or a sibling, spouse, parent, whatever. And 9 times out of 10, that person just laughs at them, and that's hurtful enough where they just they don't talk about it again unless they see something like an article that I have written or something somebody else has produced to let them know that somebody else has seen something like this. And at that point, they might be willing to come forward because now they have somebody with whom they can share their experience who's not going to laugh at them. And I think that more than anything is responsible for the number of Mothman and other weird flying creature reports that we have received overall. Is their relative popularity has led to more people being exposed to articles about this phenomenon or TV shows, documentaries, whatever. And in seeing that, they are then inspired to come forward with their own sightings rather than any other odd confluence of events or metaphysical forces or anything like that. So do I have advice for an aspiring paranormal investigator? God, I don't know. Do like anything else? I'm kidding. Oh my God, I'm kidding. No. If you have a path, all I'm saying is it's tough. It's harder than people think, and it doesn't pay, like a living wage. So most of the time. So, but if you are passionate about this and you do want to pursue it, then My advice would be, in terms of education, like I have a degree in English, and that's why I tell people like I'm a writer. That's what I do. Like that's my contribution is being able to research, investigate, and write about people's experiences. That's what I'm good at. And to do that, I have to lean on the work of scientists and other experts in their particular field. So there are lots of ways you could go about it. I think anthropology would be a relevant field. English if you want to be a writer, absolutely. I think a lot of different sciences. There aren't enough like credible biologists involved, physicists. I think given how weird all this shit is, that could be a very useful field. So something like that. The more education, the better, probably. And never stop learning. Always be open to learning new things, and like education shouldn't stop once you've graduated from with whatever the highest degree that you aspire to is. It's a lifelong endeavor, so never stop learning ever. Also, with the paranormal, have other hobbies. Like seriously, like have other hobbies, because you can't invest too much of yourself into this. And the reason I say that is because while it is very fulfilling for me to be able to work with all of these amazing witnesses, who are so brave to come forward, you're unlikely to get a lot of the answers that you're looking for. It goes on and on and on forever, and there often isn't any kind of satisfying resolution. And so the last thing I want to see for people is for anyone, and we see this in this field, it fucking happens way too often. I don't want to see anybody else get to the end of their life and look back and feel like they wasted it because they spent all their time on something and invested their whole life into something for which they have very little to show. So be active in your community. Seriously. Have friends, join clubs, volunteer, whatever. Have a family. Like, don't restrict yourself from participating fully in society for this. It is not worth it. I think that there is a lot of value in what we do, but it can't be the only thing that we do. And so that's my main advice for people is you can't let this consume you. You just cannot, because it will destroy you. But yeah, otherwise in terms of like practical advice, don't ever go anywhere alone, especially at night. Even if you're going someplace with like a partner or a team, make sure people who aren't going to be there know where you are and what time you're supposed to be home. Bring basic like safety equipment, have a first aid kit, have a reliable flashlight with backup batteries, just that kind of stuff. Don't trespass. Don't go any place like dangerous. Just in general, it's just not a good idea. And it's not like you're more likely to experience something paranormal if you're putting your life at risk than if you're not. Most of the people that I talk to were not doing life fucking risking things when they had their encounters with Mothman. They're just doing normal things. So yeah, like all of that stuff is really, really important. Read books. You're not going to learn enough. You might learn something. I hope you'll learn something from watching TV, but you'll never learn enough just from that. You have to read books, as many books as you can from as big a variety of authors and researchers as you can find. And it's okay to not agree with all of them. you shouldn't agree with all of them, because it's okay to debate these subjects. Nothing is proven. So read books written by people you disagree with. Read as much as you can. Have as broad a base of knowledge of the lore surrounding this stuff and its history, because you'll start to see things that repeat themselves. And knowing some of the history of just the paranormal in general, be that ghosts or UFOs or cryptids or whatever, can be invaluable in this field. So yeah, I think that about covers it. That's probably a lot to throw at a kid who was just hoping I would say, like, yeah, go do it. Like, you got this.
Follow your dream, kid.
Yeah, follow your dreams.
I did, and you did. We're here being professional weirdos.
Right.
I'll bite on that one though. Start local, kid. Look at your local lore and your local legends and see what is in your immediate area. Because let me tell you, nothing sucks more than to get so invested in a story and not being able to go there.
Yeah.
That is not a great feeling. Find your local thing and get really fucking good at it. And what they'll tell you all the time, people will say this, you'll come across this a lot. There's no experts in the paranormal. And I disagree with that. I think that there are people who are very knowledgeable about particular topics, who don't necessarily have the answers to what the paranormal thing is, but they definitely know a hell of a lot more than just anybody, right, on those topics. Like Tobias. I would go to Tobias for questions about the Mothman sightings in that area. To me,
Sure.
that's the expert on that. But yeah, pick topics that you're really interested in, get really, really good at them. And then you'll kind of find other rabbit holes along the way. It'll happen for you. And start a podcast.
I might as well.
Start a podcast. Tell Tobias to come on it. He will.
That's true. I got nothing else going on.
Start your podcast. But you covered it pretty much. Yeah, I was almost disappointed. I was like, is he not going to mention reading? We read so fucking much in this show.
I know. Well, I either spent all my time reading or bitching about how nobody reads anymore.
Right.
So yeah, I had to mention it. It had to come up.
I was waiting for it. So this one is, I'm interested to hear your take on this. This is from Beth. She says, it struck me while watching that the descriptions of the Mothman sound very similar to bats, albeit giant bats. Aside from perhaps the heads, but given they're black and mostly seen at night, I feel it's conceivable they're not exactly humanoid as people describe. I feel like the most compelling part of the story was the women who saw it crawling up a bank from underneath a tunnel. Considering people say it often looks wet, everything is just screaming bat to me. The largest bat today is 5 feet tall. There were giant prehistoric bats that were much bigger. Had anyone ever looked in that tunnel? I was surprised this wasn't touched on more in the episode.
Yeah, I've been all up in it. Well, it's there's it's like what the hell? Bridge. My God, I couldn't think of the word for fucking bridge. So there's a bridge that goes over this creek, right? And so it crawled up the embankment sort of underneath that. There is a drainage pipe there, but it's not big enough for like a man-sized creature to get into. So it's very unlikely that it came out of this drainage pipe. But it, in terms of the underneath the bridge, because there's like a walking path. So I guess you would call that a tunnel underneath the bridge. So yeah, I mean, I certainly didn't see, there are bats that live in that area. Of course there are. Like there are arboreal bats that eat insects and shit. And they're pretty small because we don't have very big bats here. But I didn't see any evidence of habitation underneath that bridge from anything that would be this size. And that really speaks to what I was talking about before, the point I was making earlier about the seemingly biological impossibility of this thing. We don't have any evidence of habitation by any kind of large mammal that could explain this. Now, yeah, I'm familiar with the flying fox, but that lives in the Philippines, right? Like that doesn't live here. And we would know if it did, like if there was a breeding population of large mammals like that, that lived this close to humanity, we should know about it. So I can't stress enough. I appreciate this line of thinking. I really, really do, because it's something that I thought about very early on in this. And so, if it sounds like I'm being dismissive, I'm not trying to be. It's just that this is absolutely something that I have considered over and over throughout the past 7 years in investigating these. And so I have ultimately come to the conclusion that it is very unlikely to be that. Now, this person is, again, totally correct when they say that people do often describe bat-like features. They almost as often describe bird-like features. So that's not indicative of some kind of bat in the way that maybe people think it is. Now, in the episode, I think you had people more on the bat descriptor side than the bird descriptor side, so that might be weighing it somewhat in that favor, because of that. But by and large, which is something we've already talked about in terms of like animal descriptors and stuff, bat and bird are both commonly used. So, but yeah, I mean, there's just no indication that there is a species of large bats that live in this area. And look, it's totally fine to question these people's testimony and say, did they really see what they thought they saw? Could they be mistaken? Was it really humanoid? Look, that's what they said. That's the information we have. We can take that and we can twist it into whatever shape we want to form whatever narrative we want. But I would caution against doing that because we don't know better. We don't have evidence that points towards them being mistaken. Now, there have been cases of misidentified birds where there has been video evidence involved, where I can look at the video evidence and go, okay, that contradicts the perception of this witness. So I am confident in saying, okay, they thought they saw a giant bat or a person in a wingsuit or something, but they really saw a bird. We don't have that for most of these, we don't have that for any of these paranormal sightings, right? And that's what I would need for me to be willing to go to a witness and say, hey, I think you were mistaken about what you saw. You thought you saw this, but you really saw this. Here's the evidence to prove why I'm questioning you. If that existed, awesome. It doesn't. So right now, without any evidence to contradict it, I think the most responsible thing to do is to consider the cases within the context of what people are describing. So, yeah.
It's just a very similar answer, a similar question to the vampire thing, right? I mean, if we're saying that it's giant prehistoric bats, and there aren't giant prehistoric bats, right? We don't recognize that scientifically, so therefore it's just explaining a mystery with another mystery. So until we make a discovery of giant prehistoric bats in that area, that's
that would be awesome. I love, because we get, like I said, there are like, brown bats and stuff, and that live all around here, and they're awesome to watch in the summertime. We get a bunch that just like fly all around our backyard and stuff, and and pick off insects and things, and they're fun. I'll sit out on the deck in the evening as the sun sets and watch the bats.
None over 6 feet tall yet?
No,
Okay.
none of them have fixed me with their red-eyed gaze and then terrified me or
Convinced you
anything,
to take your clothes
unfortunately.
off and dance for him?
I mean, to be fair, I was already going to do that.
That's true. That's a good point. So on to the next one. Does this phenomena bear resemblance to the reported sightings in Point Pleasant? What are the differences / similarities between the reports?
Oh boy. So, I mean, yes. The similarities are in the witness descriptions. So, if you look at what a lot of the witnesses are saying today, they match what people were saying back in the 60s in Point Pleasant. So dark, 6 to 8 foot tall, winged humanoid creature, sometimes with glowing red eyes. The differences, there aren't really appreciable differences in what eyewitnesses are describing. There's sort of the same kind of variation in reports and things. But generally, what they're describing is the same. The difference is in the narrative surrounding the sightings because of the Mothman prophecies. So, Keel, like I already explained, included all of this extra shit. And so, people have come to associate that with the Mothman phenomenon and consider it necessary to that phenomenon, which I disagree with. Because I don't think that was the point at all. I think that he was just a Fortean and thus including everything that happened in that area. It's sort of the shotgun approach, He was just including everything, to see if he hit on something, And so those are the differences, really, is that you have all of this extra stuff that people think is necessary to the Mothman phenomenon, but isn't really, that hasn't been as reported because when I wrote the Lake Michigan Mothman, High Strangeness in the Midwest, the book was already long enough with just the winged humanoid sightings, and some of them include UFO sightings and stuff like that. There has been a lot of other weird phenomena reported in the same sighting areas, other weird humanoids, UFOs and so on and so forth. And I'll include that in the book I'm working on now, certainly. But, they're not exactly the same because people don't have contactee cases now like they did back then. It's very fucking rare for people to see an Indrid cold in 2024. Now, back in the 50s and 60s, pretty common as far as weird shit involved with ufology is concerned. That was a popular narrative within ufology at that time, was the human looking UFO occupant that would communicate and have repeated visitations with a witness. That was a thing that people talked about a lot or reported a lot. That doesn't happen anymore for whatever reason. It's very rare to have those kinds of reports pop up. Same with Men in Black. You don't get a lot of Men in Black reports anymore. That just doesn't fucking happen for whatever reason. And so you have all of this stuff that either doesn't happen anymore generally, or wasn't necessarily really connected to the Mothman phenomenon, or both, that isn't as widely reported in association with these more modern sightings, sometimes because of space considerations and sometimes because of considered relevancy. And that's the big difference, which is to say, when you cut to the heart of the phenomenon, there is no difference at all.
Yeah, I agree. I do feel And I haven't taken the data on the second part, but I did kind of mention earlier how I tracked like the wing description, and it was mostly
Mhm.
feathered in this area. But I feel like the modern the triple M, the modern Midwest Mothman, has more bat wing description.
Could be. I
I
could
don't
see
think
that.
that's terrible. I mean, I don't think that matters, in the grand scheme of things.
Not really, because at the end of the day, you still get both.
Yeah,
And if one was overrepresented at one time versus another, we're still getting both. So
brown dogs and
it
black
doesn't,
dogs—they're both dogs.
yeah, it doesn't necessarily
You
mean
know.
anything.
Yeah, no, I agree. Let me go here. What do you think the Mothman is?
Oh boy. I don't know. Um, I get that question a lot, which is probably no surprise to anybody. And I generally give the same answer. And that is I am much more comfortable saying what I think an unexplained phenomenon isn't than what I think it is. And so, in the case of Mothman, speaking exclusively about the witnesses with whom I have personally worked, I would say that I think it is very unlikely that what we're dealing with is an undiscovered biological species for all of the reasons I have already pointed out. I also think it is very unlikely that the witnesses with whom I have worked closely are making anything up. So at least the cases that I have investigated personally are unlikely to be hoaxes, um, especially the ones that are credible enough where the people have put their name behind it. You know, they've decided to go on the record. Those are very unlikely to be hoaxes. Um, I think that there is no indication of um, any kind of like aberrant behavior or mental health concerns. Now, I say that with the obvious caveat that I'm not a mental health professional. But there has been no evidence that has arisen to say that any of these people are likelier to be afflicted with any kind of mental illness than anyone else. So I don't think that this phenomenon is a symptom of mental illness necessarily. And beyond that, anybody's guess is as good as mine. You know, it's just um, I would lean towards maybe some of the weirder explanations just because of what people have described. So, something capable of perceiving and that is privy to uh, dimensions that we are not would make a certain amount of sense to me. So, yeah, I would think that like um, the interdimensional hypothesis or something similar would be more heavily weighted to me. But you have to understand that more heavily weighted to me is uh, doesn't mean a lot because I am so unwilling to make definitive statements about something that we don't fully understand and don't have enough evidence to make serious determinations on. So hopefully that answers your question. But like I said, I get asked that a lot, and this is basically the same thing that I say every time because it's true.
So you don't know.
Correct.
Oh, okay. All right.
Neither
7
does
years,
anybody else. So
and you don't know.
don't believe them.
That's true. That's true. That answer could change. At any point in
Yes,
time.
with
It's
new evidence, that should be one of the core values of every person who calls themselves an investigator in this field. The willingness to change your opinions or form new opinions based on new evidence.
Yep.
That is so important. So, yes, absolutely. If we get new evidence, I 100% will amend any opinions I have based on that new evidence because that is what good investigators do.
That's right. If you can't do that, you're in the wrong line of work.
Right.
Um, are there any? This is from a different Adam. That is not as wacky.
Okay.
Are there any credible photos or footage of Mothman? And do you believe photos exist but have been removed from public online searches?
To date, there are not in there. Yeah, there aren't any photographs of Mothman that I would consider particularly credible. There are some purported photographs that exist, and most of them, in my opinion, can be explained as something prosaic. So I'll give you an example from these Midwest sightings. 2011, Pulaski Road, Chicago. So this guy is taking a photograph of this statue. There's a statue of a Native American gentleman where he, if you take it from a certain angle, the way he's holding his hand makes it look like he's exposing himself. So it's fair. It's true. And I know it's so juvenile, but it is what it is. And so this witness was doing what people do. He's taking a fucking picture of this thing because he thinks it's hilarious. And he takes 3 photographs. And in one of the photographs is this sort of like brownish wing, like weird wing thing, right? And of course, immediately, people are like, "Oh shit, it's fucking Mothman!" Oh my god, look at that Mothman you got there. Well, it's not. And we can determine that based on a couple of things. So, I mean, first and foremost, the witness's testimony is that he saw nothing with the naked eye. Like, there's nothing visible from his perspective of anything weird, right? And this thing only showed up in 1 photograph out of 3. And these photographs were taken in rapid succession. And so what we can determine from that is that chances are what showed up on this photograph, what he ended up photographing was small, and it was fast. And based on how blurry it was probably pretty close to the camera. And that would explain why he didn't notice it, So if it was something like a butterfly, for instance, that easily could have flown in front of his cell phone while he's taking these pictures, or in front of his camera. I think it was a cell phone camera. That could have easily just flown in front of the camera without him noticing. It would have been fast enough where he only would have got 1 shot of it out of 3. It would have been small and close enough to be blurry, but because of forced perspective, it would look bigger than it really was, because it's difficult to judge the size of things when they're in flight, right? And so my wife, Emily, is something of a citizen scientist, and she raises butterflies. And she has that 4-year fine arts degree in photography. And so with her help, we were able to determine that it is likely a butterfly for all of the reasons that I just mentioned. She was just like, look, this looks blurry, and it's the right shape for something like a question mark butterfly, which is a kind of butterfly. And it matches this witness's testimony 100%, Other people have floated other skeptical ideas, like it was a kite or something. And I appreciate what they were trying to do, but they really didn't think it fucking through. Because if it was a kite, 1, he would have seen it with his naked eye. 2, it would have been in all 3 fucking photographs. And 3, if you are familiar with the Pulaski neighborhood, where the fuck are you flying a kite? In the middle of the street, like it doesn't make any sense. So, yeah, like none of those explanations, rather, made any sense. It was likeliest to be a butterfly. So, yeah, there is some evidence like that. None of it's particularly compelling. There's explanations for all of it. And by and large, I don't think that discredits the phenomenon itself or any eyewitnesses. Rather, I think that it speaks to the high strangeness aspect of what we are dealing with. What was the second part of that question again?
It was, do you believe photos exist but have been removed from
Oh,
public online searches?
I mean, I don't have any evidence for that.
No.
So, I mean, my basic answer would be no, I don't believe that. And the reason I don't believe it is because there's no evidence. If we had evidence for it, then I would change my mind, of course. I try very hard not to believe in things or not to invest belief into things for which I do not have evidence.
Yeah. It reminds me of that report from the O'Hare alleged O'Hare
Yeah.
workers who recorded the four Mothman, I think, and then were taken to back somewhere in the back
Yeah.
rooms of the airport and forced to delete them off their phones.
I mean, none of that has ever been able to be corroborated,
Yeah.
and those reports aren't particularly credible. Unfortunately, I would love it if they were, but they're just not. So I wouldn't allow them to influence your opinion on the overall phenomenon very much, frankly.
Yeah. I mean, we just, in general, a government cover up, I don't think should influence anybody's opinion. It's just too much work for what? It doesn't
Yeah,
make a lot of sense. It falls apart pretty quickly. I mean, believe what you want to believe. There's no right or wrong answers, really, but there's some that are probably more right and more wrong than others.
sure.
Just saying.
Very
Um,
diplomatic.
so this statue, is it this giant advertising Indian? Is that what?
Yes.
Okay, I looked it up.
Yep.
I was
Yep.
just
Yep.
curious.
Yeah,
Uh,
where like his thumb kind of looks like a wang.
it
Yeah.
does. It kind of looks like a wiener.
Yep.
Okay, that's cool. Now I know what I'm doing when I go to Chicago. It's not looking
Yeah.
for
I mean,
Mothman.
what else is there to see?
It's
Nothing.
looking for the giant wing doodle over on Pulaski.
Right. It's the
So
only thing to do in Chicago. I kid, of course. I say this as a big Chicago sports fan. There's lots of cool stuff to do in Chicago.
yeah, you could flick the bean, look at the giant wiener. So much fun to be had in Chicago.
Oh boy.
This one's kind of has already been answered, I guess, but I think that I'm gonna kind of try to reframe it a little bit after I ask it. What is the skeptic's explanation for this, and what is the more open-minded explanation? So the way that
Sure.
I'm gonna kind of reframe it a little bit is like, just what's the range of explanations here?
Oh, for sure. So, um, to the probably hardcore debunkers who really haven't investigated anything to do with these sightings whatsoever, they probably lean towards either hoax or misidentified bird or something. That would be like the hard line skeptics. And so you will see that, there are unfortunately people who either wish that they were a bigger part of this or just want to make it about themselves or something. And one of the ways that certain people have tried to do that is by discrediting sightings that, frankly, they just don't have enough information to have a credible opinion on. So yeah, like you'll see people talk about how everything is a hoax or everything is a misidentified bird or something. And I mean, tell me you've never spoken to a witness without actually telling me you've never spoken to a witness. Like that falls apart pretty quick, like pretty quickly as a blanket explanation. Once you have actually done some field work and worked with actual witnesses. Now, those either one of those might work for individual sightings, like we were just talking about some of the O'Hare sightings, and it's possible that some of those are hoaxes because we've never been able to verify the information that was presented, and by that I mean like no other investigator has been able to verify the eyewitness testimony or no, there's just no evidence that the people even exist who are being claimed to have told these stories. And so they're so outlandish compared to the sightings we've received from people willing to say go on Unsolved Mysteries
Right.
or something similar, willing to put their fucking name and face out there,
Yeah.
that you have to question them because nobody has ever been able to follow up on these or corroborate them or verify any of the information at all. So it's possible. Now, I'm not saying definitively that they are, because I feel like I've already talked about how I don't make definitive statements without evidence, but it's possible that those are hoaxes. That's something we have to take seriously. At the end of the day, I just generally tell people that they're not particularly credible. So believe it if you want. I wouldn't, but that's not my business. You do you. So yeah, hoaxes, misidentified birds. Like, that's the far end of the spectrum for dismissive debunkery, we'll say. And then the opposite of that, on the other side of the spectrum, and just total woo-woo open-mindedness, right? You've probably got like interdimensional beings or UFO occupants, like those two. And so, people might build narratives around those to talk. Because again, there's no shortage of people who want to make this about themselves in the paranormal community. You know what I mean? Like, that's a recurring theme across all phenomena. So yeah, and so you'll have people who might have like claimed to even speak with them or channel them or whatever, and maybe they did, but I don't have any evidence of that. And so it's not something that I would invest a lot of belief in. But that's the other far side of that, would be like the interdimensional, maybe even, either interdimensional or, ultra terrestrial, that kind of thing. And I'm open to all possibilities, and I don't want to make it sound like I'm not. I just think it's premature to be making those kinds of determinations right now.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely, premature determination is. I think we've been pretty honest on the show, and I know this is some people's first time on the show, but I think it's pretty obvious that we are definitely against extremism to any degree. Um,
Right.
you gotta find your balance, whatever the topic is, for the most part.
Yes.
Unless it's about a faked alien autopsy film that you made, then of course it's obvious. But
That's true. And also, I would like to add premature determination, band name. Calling it right now.
That's a pretty good band name, actually. So when you start your band, there you go.
Yes, absolutely.
So this is the final question that I have listed. Maybe I missed something. I don't think so, though. I think I did pretty good gathering them.
Oh God! If anybody who has made it this far,
yeah,
who hears this final question, I will personally give a high five if I ever meet them in public. Like,
yeah, I'm gonna cut it off
holy
after
shit.
this one anyway. So, this will be the last one, and I'm sure we'll do another, AMA, Ryan Ask Me Anything at some point in the future.
Sure.
You have to listen to the show to find out when. That's on you. So I love this because it has an obvious mistranslation. I think it's adorable. But the question's really good too. They said,
Okay.
I'm from Brazil. Would it be possible to see a butterfly man here? Or would it depend on the environment? Butterfly man is a way cooler name than Mothman. Just saying.
That's true.
I love that.
Absolutely. Okay, so yeah, I mean, could you see a winged humanoid in Brazil? Absolutely, 100%. Because I think that there is no geographic limit to where these things can be seen. And in fact, like there are sightings. I don't know about Brazil specifically off the top of my head, but there are sightings in other countries. I mean, look at Mexico, for instance. Like there's a huge flying humanoid, or a huge number of flying humanoid reports that come out of Mexico, and I've had people contact me from all over the world. This isn't a localized phenomenon. I think some people would like it to be, and I think we should examine their motivations for doing so. But yeah, I think it's possible to see these things anywhere. So absolutely, absolutely, you could actually. Now that I'm thinking about it, I'm pretty sure I've received at least one sighting report from Brazil since the show aired. So I don't have it in front of me, but I'm almost certain. So yes.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. Brazil definitely has um, winged creatures over there of different lore. Brazil's got a lot of strange stuff happening over there. So
Oh sure.
why not? Why not Mothman or Butterfly Men or whatever you want to call them?
Yeah, fair.
I think that why not? Maybe you'll get to that report and read it on the show sometime. Um, so
Yeah, I am just neck deep in messages and emails and stuff right now. So
oh, I bet. I can only imagine.
it's a nice problem to have. I'm,
It
I'm
is.
not I'm not complaining, but it's a lot. So
It is. I mean, like we talked about, it really ebbs and flows, and they'll die off eventually, and then you'll be
right.
like, "Oh, what happened to all my reports? I better go on the Unexplained with William Shatner next.
Yes, there you go.
Get my reports in." But wow, people had questions.
Yeah, holy shit. That
My
was, I
God.
mean, that's so flattering. It's humbling, really, that people are so interested and engaged with this subject, right?
It is. It is. And on the flip side of that, I posed my general social media question, which I've been dropping the ball on, but whatever. I'm irresponsible. It's fine. About what people thought about the modern day Mothman sightings happening in the Midwest, because I have seen some pushback on this topic. But you've got to understand where I'm coming from with it. I know a lot of people that have a lot of stake in the Point Pleasant Mothman, right? And we kind of talked about that last
Oh yeah.
episode. Um, so I was curious, what did generally people think? I was really surprised at the amount of people that have absolutely no fucking idea that this is going on. I
It
really
just goes to,
was.
yeah. That's what I've been trying to say too. Like it just goes to show, like, I mean, this is such a niche interest in a tiny, like, fringe community. Like people haven't heard of it, and that's normal. I would be more surprised, I guess, if a ton of people had. Like it's not the kind of thing people are familiar with in the way that they're familiar with ghosts and Bigfoot and UFOs, right? Like it's not ubiquitous in that way. If people haven't read a book or an article or seen a specific TV show about it, they probably don't even know that it exists.
Yeah, it's wild to me. Well, I think it's wild to me because I guess I expect the people that followed me knew about this.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
was like,
fair.
weird. People are like, recent. What do you mean recent? And it's like, oh, I don't know. Actively ongoing and happening right now.
Right. Like 2024 recent.
All right, recent. But not to poke fun at anybody. Listen, it's always an opportunity to learn, and that's fine. Just I was taken aback by it. And of course, I had some expected answers. Some people, think that it's just kind of riding the coattails of the 66 to 67 flat. But of course, again, um, like we've talked about extensively, there just isn't any flap. There are no flaps. There's no
Yeah. I
flaps.
mean, to put it as politely as possible, those people don't know what the fuck they're talking about.
Exactly. They don't. That's probably the nicest way you could say that, but it's so
Right.
true. But yeah, I was pleasantly surprised by some of the answers. Of course, some people had a vested interest. Some people even claimed to take reports from some of these sightings. And, some people just same old opinions about Mothman, right? Does that mean something bad's going to happen? No, it
Sure.
doesn't. But it is interesting. That's for sure. And,
Oh yeah.
if you or a loved one have had a Mothman encounter or a winged humanoid encounter, or uh, any weird encounter at all, actually, you can, of course, write in the show on Wednesdays We Talk Weird at gmail.com or any of our social medias at Wednesdays Talk. Anywhere you do social media, you can go to singular40n.com. Tobias has a nice form there for you to fill out. He will be in contact. You can reach out to me directly. You probably already know who I am. If you don't, Ashley Hilt. I have red hair. I'm all over the internet. Google me. You'll find me. You know,
It's true.
it's
Neither
easy.
one of us should be particularly difficult to find.
Google either one of us. We're there. Let us know your strange story. It doesn't have to be winged humanoids. It could be whatever. Me in particular, I'm looking for a general humanoid sighting. So if anybody's got any of those, any encounters with any strange characters, Indrid,
Sure.
let me know. That would be great. And then I had another question, and I know I said I was cutting it off, but so they have a call out. Unsolved Mysteries has a call out for if anybody has an encounter. Do they pass that along to
Yes.
you?
They said that they would. Yeah.
Oh, okay, great. Yeah, I wanted to know anything yet from them in particular.
I haven't heard anything yet, but I would assume that at some point I will. So yeah.
Because if you're that fucking busy, they're probably even busier. So I'd be interested to
I
see
would
how that pans
assume,
out.
yeah, they're
Yeah.
probably. I mean, maybe, hopefully. I mean, I guess there's no way to really know because a lot of people watch the episode and were just like, "Oh, that guy, that's the guy," and so they came to me directly. So I don't know um, what that means in terms of like how many people would go to Unsolved Mysteries versus going directly to me. But maybe it's a shit ton, and like that's cool, and then we'll get a bunch of extra reports, or maybe most people opted to go because it's so easy to go directly to the source now in the internet
Yeah,
age, right?
that's true. That's
So,
very true. And I'm assuming you're still working alongside with Lon
oh, of
because he's
course, yeah.
probably getting a lot too.
I mean, I have talked to him a couple of times, and he said he's getting quite a few, and right now we're just all furiously trying to keep up with everything and investigate stuff as it comes in. So,
Yeah, sorting it out. Yeah, I gotcha.
oh yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll see where this saga continues. Obviously, if there's any more updates, Tobias will share them, here on the show, over on his website, singular40n.com. He's writing a whole nother fucking book about it. So, wait,
Whole fucking book.
a whole fucking book. So that'll be out sometime soon, eventually.
Slated for November. No, that's not right. Slated for next year, September next year, 2025.
Gotcha. That's right. That's right. That's right. So, keep your eyes peeled for that. Again, if you want more updates, we'll have them here as much as they come in. Tobias, any final words?
Oh boy. Yeah, actually, I just want to thank everybody who participated in Unsolved Mysteries. Everybody else with whom I've spoken that didn't participate. Every witness that has ever reached out to me. Everybody who's reaching out right now in support and with their own experiences. It really means a lot to me. Like seriously, it means a lot that you take this seriously and that you are willing to trust me with your experience because I know how important these are. I know how impactful they are. And I do take it seriously. And I want you to know that. And I want you to know how much I appreciate it. So thank you.
It is, and I will give full disclosure before you guys continue to listen to the show. If you're new here, if we're ever laughing about anything, we're not laughing at you. We're definitely laughing with you, because life is just so ridiculous and silly sometimes. Doesn't mean that we don't believe you. It just means that, again, laughter is the best medicine. That's it.
Yeah. The worst thing you can do is take yourself too seriously.
Yeah.
And a lot of this stuff It is so weird. Like, what else can you do? I laugh at my own experiences, even the really scary ones, because they're just so fucking weird.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, just, keep that in mind going forward. It's not to poke fun at anybody or, make any money off of anybody's expense. Fucking Lord knows I'm not. So,
Yeah, right. Still waiting for that money train to show up any day now, I bet.
it'd be nice, right? I hear it blowing, but it's going to somebody else's house every time. So I don't know.
Right.
But anyway, yeah, absolutely. Thanks for sharing your experiences, Tobias. Finally, we'll
I
get
have
more.
more. I have more.
Oh, I'm squeezing them out. They're coming out. Damn it.
Sure.
Maybe we'll make you go on Fringes of Reality, and you can talk about them there. Ooh,
There you go.
put you on the spot. Anyway, guys, thanks for listening, and we'll see you guys back here next Wednesday.